Before we jump in, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. It seriously helps the channel grow. All right, let's get started.
During an expedition into mysterious ancient ruins, Luffy suddenly vanishes, leaving the Straw Hats frantic and desperate to find him. Instead of answers, they're pulled into something far more unsettling: Luffy's own memories. Trapped in the past with no clear way out, the crew is forced to relive moments from Luffy's childhood, moments he never shared and never planned for them to see. As they witness his early life, his bond with Ace, and the pain and loneliness hidden behind his usual grin, the Straw Hats come face to face with the emotional scars that shaped their captain. The journey becomes less about rescue and more about understanding, as each memory challenges how they see Luffy and their role in his life. Blending friendship, hurt, comfort, and deep emotional introspection, this long, heartfelt fic explores brotherhood, trauma, and unconditional loyalty, showing that some memories are buried not because they're forgotten, but because they hurt too much to share. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is Daughter of the Sea by Kuchiachi.
Chapter 14. Enter Cat Burglar Nami. You're weak, Zoro, nothing ever changes. Kuina, it'll be alright. If you can destroy the creature, we'll explain everything to you. Now prove that you're stronger than when you used to lose to me. 2001, that's how many times they fought, and it was also the same number of times he lost to her. Zoro always knew that he was weaker than she was. His first goal had merely been to grow stronger so that he could defeat her one day, but every time he got stronger, so did she. At the time he didn't care how long it took before he would finally beat her. However, she had died before they could finally settle it once and for all. 2001 fights, there will never be a 2002. What he said that night was true in more ways than he thought. It would be the last time they ever fought. Once he lost to her again, they vowed that they would race to the top and see who got there first. But then, she died, not in battle, but because she was stupid enough to trip on some stairs and broke her neck. He remembered how furious he had been with her. It was as if she was running away from their vow. Now he was stuck here, forced to go on for both of them. His greatest rival was gone. Since that day, he trained day and night so that he could become the best, and when he finally set off on his journey to fulfill that promise, he decided to merely put it all in fate's hands. Who would have thought that he would be here now? Countless adventures and immeasurable spirit, that was what made him grow stronger. For the sake of the people he made vows with, he will continue to fight for his dream no matter how long it took or what stood in his way. Zoro, Kuina's voice seemed to echo around him, and suddenly his one eye snapped open. Breathing hard, he first thought that he was trapped in the darkness again, but he realized that there were little twinkling lights above him. It took him a minute to realize that those were stars in the night sky. Sitting bolt upright, he stared around, and realized that he knew where he was. He was back in those old ruins. The rest of the crew, minus Luffy, was there with him, and there was Brook playing his guitar and singing the sorrowful version of Bink's Sake. Chopper heard him move and looked up in time to see him sitting up. Zoro, he cried, running over to him as Brook stopped his sad song. Zoro, Usopp said, looking up, also coming over. Are you okay, Zoro-san? Brook asked in concern. Why yeah, Zoro admitted, glancing around him. What happened? He asked in confusion as he slowly got back to his feet, Ace's and Kuina's voice still in his head. Was that all just a dream? Well, we're not sure, Nami said, rubbing her head and staring around at the dark ruins. We've only been awake a few minutes. But it looks like we're back out of that hole. Or lack thereof, Sanji muttered, pointing to where the large pit had been before, only for them to see as if it had been filled in. We woke up out here and suddenly we find that it's gone. And our rubber-brained captain is nowhere to be found. But what happened? Chopper asked fearfully. Luffy was still down there. Don't worry. He's safe for now, Zoro said, thinking back, his head pounding slightly. He's with his brother. They looked up at him, startled, as he explained how he spoke with Ace and what he told him, but he didn't mention Kuina. You spoke with him? Usopp asked in a stunned tone. Ace. As in, Ace. I don't know if it was a dream or not, he confessed, his head finally clearing up, but if it wasn't a dream, then Ace really did say that Luffy's with him, but he can't bring him back as long as that monster's out there. He didn't say why though. So there's some kind of monster that was released and has taken the form of someone from Luffy's memory. Sanji summed up. That's just what I remember, Zoro said as Usopp, Chopper, Nami, and Brook all screamed at the thought. And now it's somewhere on the island. But what did Ace mean by how it's using the power of the in-between to change the island? Robin asked. Don't know, Zoro said, as he looked around the ruins. But apparently if we want Luffy back, we have to go and lure it back here and destroy it, at least that's what I think we have to do. Man, if it was Ace, you think he would have given us more of a clue to what it is he wants us to do, Nami groaned. And now hold on. Usopp stuttered out as they all headed to the doors. Just who is this thing supposed to look like? He asked. Don't know, Zoro told him, I already told you everything that I heard. I don't know if that was Ace's ghost or not, but something tells me that wasn't a dream. Wait a minute, so you mean to tell me that we just have to go stumbling around until we find the monster and bring it back here? Usopp cried out in panic. You have any better ideas? Sanji asked in annoyance. Usopp gulped as he thought it all over. Sure, he was terrified at the thought of what they might find, but after seeing some of those memories, he knew that he wouldn't be able to live with himself if he didn't at least help out here. Oh okay, he said. I don't want to do this, but if we can get Luffy back I'll do it. The great master Usopp always looks out for his friends after all. Yo-ho-ho-ho. That's the spirit, Usopp-san. Brook cheered happily as Zoro was the first out the door and glanced around the forest. In the darkness, this dark forest reminded him almost of Thriller Bark. He tried his best to ignore it as he went on ahead. But as soon as they all stepped outside the ruins something happened. The next step that Zoro took, everything around faded and started to shift around violently in a whirl of colored smoke. And the next thing that they knew was that the sun was out and there was a bright blue sky above them. The dark forest and old ruins were gone and instead they were all in a town with bright cobblestone streets and beautiful buildings on either side of them, mostly houses but with the occasional shop. What the hell? Sanji gasped, dropping his cigarette. What just happened? Call me crazy but wasn't it the middle of the night just a second ago? And weren't we in a forest? Chopper cried out, shifting to his kung fu point, suddenly anxious. No, Nami gasped out, her eyes wide as she recognized where they were. But it can't be. But it is, Zoro said to her, his hand still cautiously on his swords, it's Orange Town. Wait, you two been here? Usopp asked them startled. Only once, but I didn't forget it, Zoro said, glancing around. This town was where Luffy and I met up with Nami. It's also where we fought Buggy, Nami added darkly. Buggy? Chopper asked in confusion. He was the infamous pirate clown, she answered him dully. A clown? Frankie repeated with a sweat drop. You're kidding right? Wish she was, Sanji said, remembering how ridiculous the pirate looked when he saw him at Logatown. And this is the same guy who was part of the Pirate King's crew, right? Robin asked politely, the same pirate who was named a warlord in the last 2 years. Yeah that's, hey wait a minute, Nami said staring at her, you're saying that Buggy was made into one of the warlords? Yes, she answered coolly. Apparently, he replaced Jinbei after the war 2 years ago. Nami, Zoro, and Sanji all stared at her, having actually seen the clown themselves, and they couldn't believe that. Please tell me you're kidding, Zoro said, sure she was joking. That idiot replaced Jinbei-chan? Nami asked, looking ready to collapse. Sanji sighed as he quickly lit another match and cigarette. He puffed on it to calm his nerves before he said, well, word got out about his connection to Roger. So I guess that the government thought to try and make him an ally. It's only because of that, Nami said shaking her head. That idiot's nothing. Ah, excuse me, Brooke said in confusion, but what is wrong here? As Nami looked ready to go into a long rant about what an idiot Buggy was, Usopp interrupted. What I want to know is what's going on. He demanded. If this really is a memory, then how are we watching it? I thought we were out of that creepy hole. We are, Robin answered as she calmly walked over to the building and slowly reached out to touch it. This is different, she said softly, while her hand did pass through the stone. It was different, it was suddenly cool to the touch as well. Damn, Sanji cursed as he looked around, touching one of the passing windows and it felt almost like his hand was passing through water. What's going on here? Chopper sniffed the air cautiously. He could feel a light breeze coming from somewhere as well as smell all sorts of scents like flowers and fresh air. He could hardly smell anything before in the last few memories. Just when I thought we were getting the hang of this, Frankie said looking around. What the hell is this? I think it makes sense, Robin said turning back to look at Zoro. Zoro, didn't you say that the creature was changing the island around? Yeah, he answered, gritting his teeth as he looked, something about changing the island into pieces of memories. I see, she said frowning to herself, if that's the case, then it's changed the entire island into more of Luffy's memories in order to hide itself. And if it has taken the form of someone from Luffy's past, then that would make sense to do so. It's easy to hide when you blend in, Sanji finished for her, now understanding. And since we're back in the real world, I suppose it would make sense that we are able to feel more, but still not able to really touch anything. Wait, Chopper said, so we have to go hopping through more of Luffy's memories. Looks like it, Frankie said glancing around. The last memory was when you two set off, Sanji said to Zoro, so this is where you came to next. We sailed around for a while, Zoro said, struggling to remember. It took him a few days to really get used to Luffy's company. After traveling around on his own for so long, having someone else with him was awkward to say the least. But after a while, he had started to enjoy Luffy's straightforward personality. Until Luffy was dumb enough to get captured by a bird, he added, and I followed him here. A bird, Robin repeated in mild surprise. Yeah, Zoro said, thinking back, we were starving, and he spotted this giant bird and when he tried to grab it, it carried him off here. What a complete idiot, Usopp sighed. What had he been thinking? Man, it must have been hard for you to find him, Brook said, knowing how Zoro's sense of direction was completely off. Not really, Zoro admitted. After he ran into those 3 loser pirates at sea, getting them to row in the direction Luffy had been carried off in had been easy enough. They just kept going until they reached shore. And almost as soon as he landed he heard the explosions and just knew where to start looking. Suddenly they heard a scream breaking their thoughts and turned around in time to see that someone was running towards them. Nami gasped, realizing who it was. There she was, 2 years ago, with a map clamped tightly in her hands and running as fast as she could from a group of men chasing after her, each one looking angry and carrying a sword. Why those bastards? Ganging up on my sweet Nami. Sanji yelled in fury, charging ahead. Don't worry my dear, your brave knight is here to resu, but before he could finish, Nami ran right through him and the words got stuck in his throat. Moaning miserably, he fell to his knees, crying the whole way. I guess we still can't touch the people, Robin offered obviously as Nami ran closer towards them. What did you do to make those guys so angry? Usopp demanded of their Nami, who laughed awkwardly. I kinda stole their map, she offered, sounding more like a question. But just then, there was a large explosion in the air and next thing they knew, something fell from the sky between Nami and the pirates, causing them all to stop dead in their tracks. What was that? Nami in the memory screamed, staring back at the crater. My future captain, Nami answered, now understanding what happened. That idiot. Who would have thought? Brook laughed as the dust cleared, to show that it was indeed Luffy sitting there. And he was happily talking to himself. Finally, I'm safe now, Luffy moaned as he stood up and dusted himself, gazing around him in interest. And what just happened to me was awesome. Zoro rolled his eyes. Back on Sky Island, he had been carried off by a giant south bird and it was anything but awesome. Of course he would have thought that was cool. Luffy was gazing around, trying to figure out where he was and what to do next. Nami and the pirates were staring at him with their jaws open, while the present-day Nami gazed at her past self sadly. She looked at the shirt she was wearing, how it was now hiding Arlong's mark. And to think, if Luffy hadn't come falling out of the sky, she'd probably still be serving Arlong, or worse, she and her village would be dead. So that's how you two officially met? Robin asked Nami, noticing the sad look in her friend's eyes. Yeah, she said softly, feeling a rush of shame come over her as she watched the dark look in her past self's face. She saw an opportunity to escape, and she took it without a second thought. She watched how she walked to him, as Luffy was whining about how hungry he was. Clasping her hands together, she said in an excited voice, "Oh, hey boss, thanks for coming to save me." Boss, Chopper said, tilting his head in confusion. But I thought that you guys didn't know each other here. We didn't, Nami admitted sadly. I'm not exactly proud of it. If Luffy hadn't been so strong, I think I could have gotten him killed here. What do you? Brook began, but Luffy was already looking up at Nami's past self. Who are you? He asked her, but instead of answering, she turned and ran away, calling back, they're all yours now, boss. Have fun. Hey, that girl's getting away. One of the pirates yelled angrily. That's okay, the second said, looking at Luffy with a rather evil grin. We've got her boss now. Oh, so that's what you meant, Robin answered, you made him a decoy. You're in trouble kid, the third pirate said, holding up his sword. You should have let your crony fend for herself. The men who were chasing Nami glared at Luffy, who was still watching Nami run down the street. But Luffy finally noticed them and asked bluntly, as if he didn't hear what they said, do you guys know anywhere good to eat around here? Luffy, stop worrying about your stomach here and just beat them up, Usopp yelled, standing close to him, and tried yelling in his ear. But, of course, Luffy was completely deaf to him as one of the pirates came closer and held up a fist. Food's the least of your worries now, he yelled smugly as he threw a punch. Now they knew that it couldn't have hurt him, but the impact of it was enough to knock the straw hat off. They all knew right away that these guys weren't going to be let off the hook for that as Luffy watched his hat go flying off. His face filled with anger, Luffy punched him right back and sent him crashing into the ground. He was out cold before Luffy caught his hat and placed it back on his head, warning them to keep their hands off it. After seeing what it means to him, I don't blame him for being so protective of it, Frankie said, his heart hurting at the memory of seeing Shanks entrust it to him. Yeah, show those guys no mercy. Chopper and Usopp cheered on as the two other pirates charged, ready to take him out. Of course, it was no contest. Luffy took them both out with one punch each, now all three of them were lying unconscious on the ground like broken toys. I see what you mean, Usopp said, staring back at Nami, you could have gotten him killed if he wasn't so freaking strong. Wow, Nami exclaimed. Yeah, wow, Usopp said, now glaring at her, but do you know that if that was anyone else he could have? That wasn't me, Nami said, pointing up to the roof. I mean it was me, but that me. He looked, and sure enough there was Nami looking over the roof edge, down at Luffy. She stared at the beaten pirates before she called to Luffy, "You're really strong." Luffy looked up at her as she jumped down to the balcony below her, calling out in an impressed voice, "Even though both of them had sabers, you beat them barehanded." "Hey, you're the girl who set me up. Who are you?" Luffy asked, though he didn't sound angry, merely curious. "I'm a talented thief who steals strictly from pirates," Nami answered him. "The name's Nami. Hey, wanna team up with me?" "You were asking Luffy to join you?" Chopper asked in surprise. "Well, I didn't know he was looking for crewmates himself at the time," Nami explained. "I wanted him to help me steal." "In other words, you wanted to take advantage of him and then leave with all the treasure," Zoro said while Sanji glared at him. "How dare you accuse Nami Swan of something like that?" Sanji snapped at him. "Actually," she said, looking embarrassed, "that's about right." "Oh, Nami, you're so cute even when you're deceiving people," Sanji swooned, hearts back in his eyes. Thanks anyway lady, but I think I'll pass," Luffy answered her coolly as he started walking away. Nami blinked down in surprise at that. "Hold on," she yelled after him as she followed him, "at least think about it first. I never met someone who turned down the chance to get treasure." Nami laughed as they followed after the two. "I guess that should have been my first clue that he wasn't normal." Luffy suddenly stopped, his hands over his stomach. "I just remembered," he said to himself before he fell to his knees as if he was too weak to stand up. "I'm so hungry," he whined out. "Well, come with me and I'll find you something to eat," Nami offered him. That got his attention. Luffy bolted up and stared at her hungrily, which took her aback. "Yeah, are you serious? You're unusually generous here," Zoro muttered to her suspiciously. "I thought he'd be more willing to listen if I helped him out," Nami said as she watched herself snap out of it and led him down the street to one of the bigger houses. "Wow, so do you live here, Nami?" Chopper asked her interested. "Not quite," she answered, "I was just staying there while I tried to collect treasure. No one else was living there, so I don't think there was any problem." "Treasure for what?" Chopper asked innocently, but Nami didn't answer as she led the way, following the two to one of the larger rooms where Luffy was helping himself to all the food he could find. "Yummy," Luffy yelled happily, shoving food into his mouth with a satisfied expression. After a few mouthfuls, he finally turned back to Nami and asked, "So do you live here in this big house all by yourself?" "This isn't my house, I'm just staying here for the time being," Nami told him casually, as if he just asked what the weather was like today as she sat on the edge of the table, watching him eat. "Everyone's left this town because of Captain Buggy. Again with this Buggy guy." Chopper said, "Is he really that bad of a guy?" "Well, I guess to normal people he's dangerous," Nami admitted, thinking it over, "but really, he's an idiot. So this guy came to this town and basically took over, forcing all the citizens out?" Frankie asked, hating pirates like them. "Rather, he was using this town for target practice," Nami confessed, remembering of those buggy balls and all the destruction he had caused. "Oh, so you're just a petty thief," Luffy summed up for them all. "He got it sooner than I thought," Zoro said in full agreement. "Shut Moss head if you know what's good for you," Sanji threatened. "How rude," Memory Nami huffed at him, "I only steal from people who deserve it. Pirates. So don't compare me to some scumbag, petty thief. A thief's a thief as far as I'm concerned," Luffy said after he managed a big swallow of bread. "I agree with you there," Zoro nodded with him, and Sanji went and tried to kick him in the head. As the two began to fight, Nami tuned them all out as she watched her past admit to Luffy, "My goal is to earn 100 million bellies, no matter what I have to do or how long it takes." Luffy looked at her curiously. "What do you need so many berries for anyway?" "It's a secret," Nami said bluntly, clearly letting him know that she didn't want to talk about it as Luffy went back to the food. "Geez, I know you love money and everything sis, but really, what's it all for?" Frankie asked. Nami looked away, not wanting to think about it. "I'm sure that you'll find out," she admitted sadly as the others continued to look at her. "But I can tell you that money wasn't for me." "But if not you then?" Brook began, but he stopped. He could see that Nami was looking more upset by the moment. So instead he asked if he could see her panties instead. It worked to take her mind off that as she gave him a hard punch in the head and knocked him to the ground, yelling at him to shut up. "But with this chart grand line, the 100 million is definitely a possibility," Memory Nami said as she tucked the chart safely under her shirt. She said the magic words. As soon as Luffy registered what she said, he whispered, "A chart." He then looked up at Nami and asked, "So you must be a navigator?" Nami gave him a proud smile and said, with no hints of humility, "I'm the most skilled navigator you're ever likely to meet." "As modest as ever I see," Robin teased her with a smile. She laughed, her hand behind her head, and admitted, "Well, it's true." Zoro and Usopp both shared a dark look, knowing that she honestly hasn't changed a bit since then. And it didn't help that Sanji was there praising her beauty and brains all at once. "I still don't get how we got stuck with these two," Zoro sighed to them. But then Luffy stood up excitedly. "Oh, wow, that's perfect. Then how about you join my crew?" he asked eagerly. "I've been looking to recruit a navigator." Nami's eyes lit up in excitement. "Really? Sure, you can be the navigator for our pirate crew. Luffy exclaimed happily. At once, Nami's happy expression turned sour. It was startling how her mood had shifted to a much colder expression, with her smile quickly turning into a frown. She glared hard at Luffy and said firmly, "No." "Geez, what'd say?" Frankie asked her. "Pirate," she muttered with a sigh. "In those days, I was convinced that all pirates were rotten to the core." Luffy was looking at her in surprise as Nami sighed. "I didn't realize you were a pirate," she said darkly. "Yeah, I made an important promise," Luffy said as he took off his hat and stared at it fondly. "I promised the guy who gave me this hat that I'd form a crew and become the greatest pirate ever." "Yeah, I see that now," Nami muttered to herself as her past self slammed her hands on the table angrily. "There's nothing in the world that I despise more than pirates." She almost screamed at him, "I only love money and tangerines." "Nami-san," Brook said in surprise. "I know," Nami sighed, "I see that not all pirates are the same. But you see, I suffered a lot because of a certain pirate crew for a long time. And all the pirates that I stolen from were the same as them. I didn't think that there were any good pirates out there." "Really?" Chopper asked. "You only like money and tangerines." "This was years ago, Chopper," she answered with a smile. "I've changed a lot since then. And I'm honestly happy here." "Oh, that's good," Chopper said happily. "Come on," Luffy whined, "be our navigator." "I said no," Nami said harshly as she walked towards the window, refusing to say anything else. Luffy looked after her before he shrugged it off and went back to his food. "You're lost." "Wait, did he just give up?" Usopp said, startled. "Like that?" "Yeah, with me he wouldn't stop bugging me about joining," Sanji said in bewilderment. "And he wouldn't let Moss head here off the hook." "True, but let's not forget that he barely knew Nami here," Robin reminded them. "Even with Zoro, he was impressed when he heard about Zoro's character. But he just met her and she did set him up before they even introduced themselves. And she made it clear that she didn't want anything to do with a pirate. Like I said, Luffy wouldn't actually force someone to join if they truly didn't want to join." "That's about it," Nami said, feeling a little bit relieved at that. Nami continued to stare out the window as the present Nami sighed. She remembered seeing Buggy's henchmen out there looking for her and came up with a stupid plan that almost got them all killed. And sure enough, she watched herself look back to Luffy with a wicked grin, mean that she had a plan to make her rich. "What are you planning here?" Usopp asked, feeling nervous for Luffy as she walked back to the table, like how a cat would when it was stalking a bird. "Nothing good," Zoro said, rolling his eye, already aware of where these two were gonna end up. So it was Nami who got them almost killed and blown apart by Buggy. He had been sure that it was Luffy. "I know, I'm not proud of it," Nami muttered softly. Luffy had unknowingly helped her out by taking out those thugs for her. She knew that stunt could have gotten him killed, but at the time her hatred for pirates justified everything. "I guess I might consider joining you, but only if you agree to certain conditions," Nami said with a sweet tone that got Luffy's attention. "Really? I'll do anything," he said at once happily. "Did he have to say that?" Usopp said, quickly muttering a prayer for Luffy. "He's toast," Frankie nodded with him. "He's too naive," Robin sighed, "he trusts too easily." "That's gotten him into a lot of trouble," Zoro agreed at once. "But what did you want from him, Nami-san?" Brook asked curiously. Nami's past self answered that as she pulled out a length of rope. "Well then, I want you to come with me to meet Buggy the Clown. But first," faster than blinking, she had Luffy tied up and held up a long length of it like a leash. "Why'd you have to tie me up?" Luffy asked curiously. "Luffy, you idiot," Zoro sighed. "The rope's just for appearances," Nami lied. "If that's not a lie, I don't know what is," Usopp said, looking ready to fall over. How could Luffy be so dense? It was obvious that she was going to get them in trouble. "Hey, just because I wanted to use him to get to Buggy's treasure didn't mean that I wanted him killed," Nami snapped at them all. "Well, okay then," Luffy said agreeably, "I've been looking forward to meeting some other pirates. So let's going. Just hold your horses, what's the big rush?" she complained as they left the house. Nami felt terrible as she watched the excited expression on Luffy's face. Like he was a child who thought was gonna get a treat. Nami hated all pirates. After she lost her mother to Arlong, she had believed that all pirates were the same. But it was after meeting Luffy here did she see that just because you call yourself a pirate didn't mean that you were bad. "So where are we going?" Brook asked. "To the drinker's bar," Nami sighed. "Sounds like my kind of place," Zoro said to himself. Luffy didn't complain the whole time as he walked happily along, like how a dog would. No one said anything else until they came to Buggy's place just on the roof of the bar. They were all taken aback by it aside from Nami and Zoro. "Is the circus in town?" Brook asked interestedly. "I always loved the circus, yo-ha-ho-ho." "Well, believe me, this isn't the type of circus you want to go to," Zoro said darkly as he looked at the pirates all running around performing tricks or drinking. "I don't know about you guys, but I can't take these guys seriously," Frankie muttered, staring around them. "I mean, when I think of scary pirates, clowns and balloons aren't what comes to my mind." Nami sighed in agreement, as she looked to the tent where Buggy was sitting. "That's Buggy," Chopper asked hesitantly. He was on board the Pirate King's crew. Usopp asked with another sweat drop. Huh? Brook asked as he watched Nami come forward with Luffy. The buggy pirates stopped partying long enough to look up at them in surprise. As soon as they were in front of Buggy, Nami shoved Luffy to the ground before she stuck her tongue out at him. You're scaring me now, Nami, Chopper whispered fearfully. That is a cruel thing to do to someone, Usopp said with a gulp, now moving cautiously away from her, as if thinking that she'd do the same thing to him. She looked down at her feet sadly, feeling more grateful to Luffy than ever. If it had been anyone else, they never would have forgiven her for something like this. Who she was back then, she wasn't proud of it. But at the same time, everything she did for her village, and she was proud of that. I've captured the real thief, Captain Buggy the Clown, and here's your chart back. Called her own voice, and it snapped her out of it as she watched her past walk over to Buggy with the chart. Buggy smirked as he watched her. Not that I don't appreciate it, by why the sudden change of heart, little girl. She handed the chart to him and stepped back as she said, shrugged casually, I had another fight with my boss and I just can't take it anymore. She then looked up innocently and asked benevolently, so I thought I'd see if I could join your crew instead. Buggy looked at her as the rest of his crew gulped down, looking nervous. What's with them? Chopper asked, confused. Not all pirates appreciate being stolen from, Robin answered, knowing how brutal pirates could be. Even though Nami brought the chart back to him, she was still the one who stole it in the first place. Buggy might have still killed her to make an example for others. Chopper screamed in terror. Don't worry, Nami said, looking at him. He bought the lie hook, line, and sinker. No sooner had she said that did Buggy start snorting out in laughter. You're fed up, huh? I must admit you're an amusing girl, he said, grinning evilly at her. I like you. Of course you can join my crew. Nami just continued to smile at him, even as Luffy was shoved into stone and metal cage behind them. Huh, so that's how he got locked in that thing, Zoro muttered to himself. It's a great day to be a pirate, Buggy said before looking at Nami. Girl, what do you call yourself? I'm Nami, she answered happily, and he laughed again and declared a welcome party for their newest crewmate. Cheers were sounded everywhere as a party erupted, bringing out food and booze. That was when the party really came out. This Buggy guy may not be the best example of a pirate, Frankie said looking at the drinking pirates, but you gotta hand it to him. He knows how to party. That I can't deny, Zoro said, looking longingly at the booze that everyone was guzzling down. As for Luffy, he spent the time trying to stretch his arm out from his bounds to grab some meat, but it was like how he couldn't reach for the glass back in Blue Jam's hideout. He kept falling short. Then there was Nami, who was drinking with Buggy. Her eyes were narrowed as she looked around at the partying pirates. Why do I not like that look in your eyes? Frankie asked. Nami shrugged. The best way to steal from a pirate is when they're drunk. I was just waiting for them to pass out before I steal their treasure. Now listen up, Buggy suddenly cried out, getting everyone's attention. Men, it's time to prepare the Buggy Ball. Buggy Ball. Sanji repeated it lost. Think of it as like an exploding cannonball, Nami said. In her opinion, that really was Buggy's only weapon. Even with his chop-chop abilities, he wasn't much of a threat, at least not anymore. She was sure that even she could take him on easily by herself now. Just then, one of the men heaved out an enormous cannon while another brought a bigger than normal red cannonball with Buggy's mark on it. I'm guessing that's the Buggy Ball. Usopp asked as they carefully loaded the cannon. What gave it away, genius? Nami asked sarcastically. All set, Captain, the pirate said as they pointed the cannon towards the town. Past Nami looked nervous as she asked with a slight stutter, what are you going to do with that thing? Just observe, Buggy answered, with a horrible evil look on his clown face, giving a justifiable reason to really be afraid of clowns, the awesome might of the Buggy Ball. Light it. And with once it was fired, it didn't just bang like most cannonballs did, it went off in a giant fireball. The blast was blinding as it struck the houses, going through them all like a stack of dominoes would. Shrapnel was sent flying off in all directions as the boom was large enough to deafen their ears, and when the light died down they stared at the entire block that was destroyed. There wasn't anything but giant piles of splinters. How terrible, Brook whispered, staring at the damage. What kind of person would destroy a person's home like that? This is what most pirates are these days, Nami whispered as Robin nodded dully. Brook shook his head in shame. Pirates these days weren't anything like when he was still sailing before. Yes, they loved treasure, but it was all about the adventure. Not mindless destruction. But man, Frankie said in amazement, just what were those balls made of? Not that they hold anything to the things that I've made on the Sunny, he added. Don't know, Nami sighed. But I think that's when the party ended. That was flashy, Buggy laughed as he went on. With these Buggy balls and the power of the devil fruit, I should have no problem conquering the Grand Line. He's kidding, right? Frankie asked hesitantly. You think that someone who once sailed with Roger would have a better idea to how the world is, Zoro sighed. But Nami was right, he's just an idiot. I think that his ego is almost as big as that nose of his. And that's the biggest nose I've seen, Chopper said before looking up at Usopp. Yours is probably the longest though, Usopp. What? Usopp cried out in outrage. My mother gave me this nose, I'll have you know. Huh, Luffy suddenly yelled out, gaining everyone's attention. But it's my destiny to conquer the Grand Line. They all stared at him. You know, Sanji said, that sounds kinda pathetic with him stuck inside a cage like that. Yep, Zoro agreed, before he blinked, horrified that he actually agreed with the crap cook. However, Buggy wasn't amused. He was glaring at Luffy with annoyance, and it only got worse when Luffy continued, and then I'm gonna become king of the pirates. Shut up, you idiot, Nami yelled at him, looking scared that he went too far. But instead of getting angry, Buggy started laughing. I can see why you're sick of him, Nami, he said to her. Gulping, she nodded quickly. Yeah, I know. He never takes anything seriously, he thinks that life's a big game. He acts like a little kid, she said, sounding nervous as she agreed with him. I see, Buggy agreed with her as another evil look came to his face. In that case, how about I give you a buggy ball to blow away your old boss? You mean? Usopp croaked out at the thought. He meant to kill him. Nami nodded as she watched her past self's eyes widen in horror at the thought. While she didn't like pirates, the idea of sinking that low was too much for her. It will be a great opportunity to prove your loyalty to me, your new captain, Buggy went on as his men came running up with another ball. Men, he cried as he turned. The heavy cannon was ready. That's all right, Captain, Nami quickly, unable to hide the fear in her tone. We don't need to finish him off quite yet. Let's get back to the welcoming party and have more fun. What was going on through your head here? Robin asked her. Mostly, what the hell did I get myself into, or something like that, Nami answered grimly. You wouldn't really have, Chopper asked anxiously. Of course not, Nami told him hotly. I have standards, you know. But Buggy was smiling down at her in a horrible, twisted way. He looked quite mad as he confessed, this is my idea of having more fun. And without another word he handed Nami a box of matches while the rest of the crew cheered for her to fire. I'm curious to know how you got out of this, Robin said. You better think of something, Nami-san, Brooke said nervously glancing around. I don't like these people. You and me both, Nami said, but she turned to Luffy, knowing that he was about to give her some real advice here. Luffy just gazed at Nami calmly. It was impossible to know what was going through his mind. How dare that shitty bastard try to force a woman to do something so disgusting? Sanji hollered furiously. But Nami just stood there, staring at the scene in front of her. She remembered trying to think of what she would do. She knew that if she didn't fire she'd be killed, but if she did, she'd forever have blood on her hands. Hey, you're not wimping out on me, are you? Buggy yelled impatiently behind her past self, and she jumped at his voice. You're shaking, I see, Zoro said softly, looking at past Nami's hands. Luffy saw it as well. What's the matter? He asked, and she froze at his voice, as if forgetting that he could speak. Your hands are shaking, he pointed out, and she gave him an angry look. This is what happens when you take on pirates with half-assed resolve, Luffy stated calmly. You know he's taking this well, Frankie stated. He's tied up and locked in a cage where they could kill him at any moment, but he's calm here. Because I don't think that he believed that you had what it takes to kill him, Nami-san, Brooke stated. Nami smiled a little at that, making her feel better. Resolve to do what? Nami suddenly demanded. To kill someone like it's nothing. Is that a pirate's resolve? No, Luffy said as a smile appeared on his face, as if testing her. You gotta be willing to risk your own life. Nami stared at him, a strange look suddenly entered her eyes. One of the pirates finally got tired of waiting and marched over to light the match. But as his hand went to the fuse, Nami's eyes darkened. Here it was. To stand back and do nothing, or risk her life for what she knew was right. Nami smiled as she watched herself pull out her staff and finally took charge. As soon as he was out on the floor did everyone freeze at her daring. The pirates, Buggy, and even Luffy were all surprised by what she did, but none so much as Nami herself. Oh crap, she whispered, staring at her staff and the unconscious pirate. I knew it, Brooke said in relief. Nami, what's the meaning of this outrage? Buggy demanded. I'm sorry. Nami quickly apologized to him. What's wrong? Just shoot him already. Buggy screamed at her. Huh, so now you've decided to save me? Luffy questioned behind her in confusion. Don't be so stupid. Nami yelled at him as she looked back at him for a moment. I'm not doing this for you, you idiot. She screamed, holding her staff up, finally ready to fight. I just don't want to lower myself to these inhuman pirates. Some of the Straw Hats stared at her, some of them unsure to what she was saying. Okay, thanks anyway, Luffy said lightly, still not looking bothered. That seemed to be enough for Nami as she finally declared for them all to hear, pirates took the life of a person very dear to me. I'll never be one of them. Nami, Robin said softly, looking back at her as she kept her eyes straight forward, her own hands shaking a little. Nami, is that true? Chopper asked quietly and she nodded. My mother, she whispered in hardly more than a croak, was killed by pirates when I was 10 years old. That's why I hated pirates so much. Her eyes started to burn a little at the thought, but she blinked hard. She thought about her mother all the time, she missed her every single day, and seeing this was just a painful reminder to what she had been forced to do by herself for so long. Nami Swan, Sanji whispered gazing at her sad expression. It's all right, she told him, raising her head high. It's hard, sometimes it hurts more than others. But this isn't my life anymore. That's what matters. Frankie sniffled a little as Luffy understood and said, I see, but that was when he screamed out, for the first time losing his cool, ah. Nami. The fuse. Nami's eyes widened when she looked down, and sure enough it was lit and burning fast. Oh, crap, Sanji said, trying to think of something he could do to help, but he might as well just be blowing air for all the good he could do. So you think that pirates are just inhuman filth to you? Buggy screamed furiously as he then hollered, get her, men. At once several of his crew charged, ready to attack. Nami stood back, blocking that one attack, but when she tried to swing back, they jumped up, missing it completely. Cowards. Brook called furiously, all of them against one woman. They're all dead if I ever meet up with them. Sanji declared, fire licking his body. I'm gonna break each and every one of their faces. Luffy was looking every which way, chanting water over and over as Nami finally dropped the staff and went running towards the cannon. She grabbed hold of Fuse with her bare hands. Nami. Chopper yelled when he saw her screaming in pain, don't you realize the serious burns you could have gotten from that? Nami. Oh, no, were you alright? Sanji cried out, looking terrified. I was fine, she smiled, that was nothing. Watch out. Luffy warned as Buggy's henchmen charged from behind, ready to kill. Nami closed her eyes, ready for the blows to strike. Sanji went charging ahead, memories be damned. He was going to protect Nami. Relax Nosebleed, Zoro said, smiling as he looked back to see someone jumping to the roof and charge at them. Let someone else handle it. Just like that, the pirates were all scattered everywhere and screaming in pain as a familiar figure jumped between Nami and the Buggy pirates. Zoro. Chopper screamed out happily, eyes bright as he watched the former pirate hunter live up to his name. Hey now, past Zoro said causally, not even batting an eye as he took down the pirates, it's not very nice for all of you to gang up on the poor girl. You are so cool, Zoro-san, Brook said amazed as Zoro smirked at that. Zoro. Luffy exclaimed happily. You could have come sooner you know Moss Head and saved Nami some pain by taking out that cannon, Sanji suddenly complained. What? He yelled at him, I don't see you doing anything. But his past self looked back to Nami and asked, you hurt? She stared at him, not really registering what he said, so he asked again, I said, are you hurt? And no, I'm fine I think, she croaked out. Wow, you sound almost concerned, Usopp said to Zoro. That was before I realized what a manipulative witch she was, he answered and Nami glared at him as Sanji threatened to poison his food. What a relief, Luffy sighed gratefully, I'm glad you found us. Now hurry up and come get me out of here. How do you keep getting yourself into these situations? Zoro asked his captain, rolling his eyes as he hoisted his sword over his shoulder and headed over to the cage. First a bird flies off with you and now I find you trapped in a cage. It's an interesting story actually, Luffy answered. Yeah, and now that I finally know what happened, Zoro sighed, I'm almost sorry I asked. I'm more surprised that you found the place, Frankie said in a teasing tone and Zoro shot him a deeply annoyed look. You all have something to say to me. He snapped at them all as Buggy spoke up again. So, you're Zoro, he said smugly, if you're here for my head you've got the struggle before you. Zoro shook his head at how careless he had been. It didn't matter if Buggy was a devil fruit user or not, to think he let his guard down for even a moment was shameful. His past self didn't look the least bit interested, and he let him know it. No, not interested, he said. I gave up pirate hunting. I'm here for my friend. Zoro you're so cool. Chopper cheered on in complete awe. But Buggy didn't seem annoyed or relieved. He was still smiling that ugly smile and said, but I'm interested though. Killing you will boast to my reputation. As if he could kill him, Usopp said smugly. He's dead meat if he tries. But Zoro stared at himself, almost trying to will him to pay attention that something was wrong. But instead, he looked back at Buggy and threatened, if you try, you'll die. As expected, bro, Frankie laughed, looking forward to seeing him take care of Buggy. Buggy took out several daggers and held them like claws in his hands as he laughed louder than ever. Oh, is that so? Zoro sighed in annoyance. I tried to warn you, but, oh well. Robin looked over to their swordsman and realized that he was looking embarrassed at this. Did something happen? She couldn't see someone like Buggy ever getting the upper hand of a fight, unless. Die flashily. Buggy yelled as he charged Zoro, who pulled out his swords. The battle was over instantly, Zoro cut him into pieces and scattered his body parts across the roof. Usopp, Brook, and Chopper all screamed at that, never believing that Zoro could have hacked someone to pieces like that. You didn't have to go that far did you, Zoro-san? Brook croaked out as he watched Buggy lying there. Past Zoro merely put his swords away, not even looking at the body. That wasn't much of a fight was it? He asked. Wow, he's weak, Luffy said, sounding a little disappointed. Great job, Zoro. But there was something wrong. Wait, didn't you say this guy was a warlord? Frankie asked Robin suddenly, how can he be a warlord if he's dead? Because he's not, Nami explained, he can't die by a swordsman no matter how hard you try. But how is that possible? Brook asked startled. No way, Past Nami whispered in amazement before they all noticed that the buggy pirates began to chuckle to themselves darkly. Each one with a depraved grin on their face, the look gave them all goosebumps because it was uncanny the resemblance, it almost reminded them of Blue Jam and his crew when they caught Luffy and Ace in the fire. Hey, why are they laughing? Luffy asked, not liking this either, and Robin couldn't help but wonder if he thought of Blue Jam as well as he looked at them nervously. Their captain is lying dead on the ground and yet they're still laughing. Nami asked, also looking unnerved, what's going on? Yeah, is he dead or not? Chopper cried out, now feeling fear racking his body. Fellas, what do you find so damn funny? Zoro demanded, and Usopp, Brook, and Chopper all screamed in terror as Buggy suddenly drifted up behind him, just floating in midair. He's a ghost, Brook screamed in terror. A zombie, Usopp and Chopper cried, hugging each other. Now there's something you don't see every day, Robin said in mild surprise. He ate a devil fruit. Right, Nami nodded as the disembodied hand holding a knife suddenly floated up as well and flew at Zoro. Zoro, look out, Chopper cried, but too late. The knife went right through his lower left side. Zoro, Luffy cried out in horror. Buggy's still alive, Memory, Nami screamed out, looking ready to run screaming from what she was seeing. I can't believe that coward stabbed you like that with your back turned, Brook screamed out, that was such a disgusting move. Though it pains me to admit it, I agree, Sanji muttered as he watched past Zoro yell in pain. Zoro closed his eye. He was lucky that he got away from this with nothing more than a flesh wound. Buggy was arrogant and stupid, that's the only reason that he didn't kill him when he had the chance. Zoro felt the need to kick himself. Again, here was proof that he honestly had no idea to how big the world was. Even if he didn't know about Buggy's powers, he should have remained on guard, always aware of his surroundings. The chop fruit, Buggy explained as he put himself back together. That's the name of the devil fruits that's given me my powers. I'm a chop person and now I can never be defeated by the sword. He burst out laughing as Nami looked like she was about to faint. His limbs, reattached, she whispered in shock. I always thought devil fruits were just a story that pirates told. There are over 100 different types of devil fruits, Robin explained, but rarely do you see one outside the Grand Line. So it is understandable, but still, someone who can break apart in pieces. Usopp hissed, shivering at the thought. That's disgusting, so he's a chop man. Luffy asked from his cage, that's pretty freaky. Like you're one to talk Rubberbrain, Sanji sighed. I didn't hit any vital organs, but that's a serious wound you have there. Buggy said with a wide grin, fingering his knife, so I'm guessing that I am the winner. Only because you fought dirty. Chopper screamed out, now running over to Zoro just as he fell to his knees and began to pant in pain, blood already soaking his side. That's not like you though, Zoro, Frankie muttered, looking to the one-eyed swordsman next to him. What happened? But Zoro didn't have to answer, his memory self did. I let my guard down, he hissed, breathing hard through gritted teeth, stupid mistake. Couldn't have said it better myself, Zoro sighed, his hand still resting on his swords. I can't believe I let myself get stabbed by such a weakling. Sanji rolled his eyes. You're such an idiot, he said. You say something nosebleed. He snapped back. Letting someone stabbing you in the back like that. Sanji taunted, that's just sad. But before they could get into another fight, Luffy couldn't take listening to Buggy laughing and his crew cheering another second. Stabbing him in the back was a cowardly move, he roared in outrage, you big nose. At once, all chanting and cheering stopped as the Buggy pirates froze where they were, sweat pouring down their faces as they stared, terrified at Buggy. Buggy's eyes widened in rage. What's that you said? Buggy hissed dangerously, looking ready to kill, who has a big nose? Who does he think? Usopp demanded, if he doesn't like his nose why not just take it off? Because I don't think that's a fake nose, Nami confessed. You mean he was born with it? Brook began before laughing. It's like fate itself was mocking him from the start, Robin muttered in amusement. But Buggy had enough as he threw his hand, which still held the knife, at Luffy. Luffy! Past Zoro called in panic, but Luffy had chopped down on it with his teeth, stopping it dead in its tracks. He always did have a powerful jaw, Chopper sighed in relief as Luffy declared that he was going to kick Buggy's ass as soon as he got out of that cage. And as if to prove his point, he bit down until he broke the knife's blade. But instead of scaring him, Buggy only continued to laugh, declaring that he was going to kill them all with his own hands. Right, Frankie sighed, that would be humiliating, dying by Buggy's hands. Luffy however was laughing, screaming out that he refused to die before he finally looked at Zoro and gave him an order. Possibly their first captain, swordsman order since they took down Axe-Hand Morgan. Zoro, get up. What? Memory, Zoro exclaimed in surprise, and they didn't blame him, how was he going to be able to fight with that injury? You better have a really good plan or else we're all dead. Past Nami yelled at him, so what are you guys gonna do? But Luffy didn't say anything as he continued to smile confidently, looking only at Zoro, and it was as if they were suddenly able to hear each other's thoughts. For a moment, Zoro continued to look confused before a grin appeared on his own face, getting what Luffy wanted him to do. I gotcha, Captain, Zoro said with a smirk. Wait, what are you talking about? Chopper asked him as past Nami became even more baffled and looked ready to fall over. Ignorant fool. Time to die. Buggy screamed as he tried to attack Zoro again. Again, that's a cowardly move. Brook screamed, but Zoro was back on his feet as he fought Buggy off, finally able to cut through him and ran past him. Your three-sword style has no effect on me. Buggy screamed as his body became whole again, I've already told you. But he then realized that Zoro had run for the cannon. Hey, listen to when I'm talking to you. He screamed back at him. Idiot, Sanji sighed, smacking himself in the forehead, stop talking and bragging already. Doesn't he see how much of an opening he left here? I think that Buggy just liked to hear himself talk, Nami sighed. But what exactly are you planning? But Brook didn't get to finish his sentence for Zoro had run under the cannon's hand and pushed up on it. That was when he fully understood, they were gonna use Buggy's own weapon against him. EHHHHHH. Chopper screamed in fear as he watched Zoro tear his own injury open farther. Zoro, what were you thinking? Well, there wasn't much time to think, Zoro answered as he watched himself struggle under the weight. I was only following Captain's orders, and with one great big heave, he had succeeded in flipping the large cannon over to the opposite side and pointed it right at Buggy and his men. And as soon as they saw that cannon head they screamed in fright as Zoro ordered Nami to hurry and light the fuse. Damn you Moss Head, how dare you treat Nami like that? Sanji yelled, you rather that we get killed here. Zoro snapped at him in annoyance as Nami pulled the matches out and struck one. Wait, Buggy screamed out in panic as Nami did what she was told. Just wait, the cannon's still loaded with a special Buggy ball. Karma, you don't mess with it, Frankie muttered, remembering how eager Buggy had been to use it before. Buggy continued to plea, but it was too late, the fuse was gone just as Zoro and Nami ducked and covered their ears as the cannon fired with a boom that echoed around them, literally tearing the building apart as the crew all screamed. Some of the Straw Hats also screamed, this was worse than before, some of them having to cover their own ears as the explosion engulfed everything, leaving nothing but smoking debris. So just by looking at him, you knew that he was actually telling you to point the cannon at them and shoot it back. Brook called to Zoro once his hearing had returned and the smoke filled the air. Pretty much, Zoro answered unconcerned. But how? Usopp asked, I mean, you were with him for a little while but you knew. It's just something I would have done if it were me, he answered coolly. Brook was highly impressed. The two of them had only been crewmates for a short time, but they already knew how to communicate almost perfectly. Though the smoke didn't bother them, they still couldn't see a thing. Thankfully they were able to find their way out, and aside from some throbbing eardrums, they were all perfectly fine, which couldn't be said for Buggy's crew. What happened to you all? Frankie asked, trying to find them. He was answered with a growl of pain from behind him. Through the rubble, Zoro appeared, and he was carrying Luffy, who was still in the cage. Nami went running with him, staring at the two of them in wonder. Chopper screamed, Zoro, what were you doing? You're making the injury worse. Getting us out of there. He answered obviously. You alright, Zoro? Luffy asked, how bad are you injured? Just shut up and don't worry about how I'm doing, he snapped back, struggling under the weight of the cage. I need to concentrate if I'm gonna get us out of this. Nami just continued to stare at them as Zoro finally asked Luffy who she was. Oh, right, Luffy said evenly, she's our new navigator. I'm not sure about this, Nami countered nervously, who are you guys anyway? Robin looked to Nami and asked, just what was going through your mind here? Just thinking that even pirates can still risk their lives to rescue their friends, she said softly. One heck of a way to make an impression, Brook said softly as Zoro hissed at her to move out of the way. Blood squirted out of his wound as he heaved the cage up on his back and lumbered forward. Luffy saw the blood and tried to tell him to put him down, which Zoro ignored as until they were a safe distance away, and even then, he proceeded to drag it beside him. You really are crazy, Chopper snapped at him. But Zoro ignored him as memory Zoro kept dragging the cage until he came to rest in front of one of the buildings where his strength finally left him and he fell to the ground, looking ready to sleep. Bro, you really don't look good, Frankie said nervously as he watched the bloodstain on his shirt grow bigger. Nothing that a little rest didn't cure for me, Zoro waved off unconcerned. Even Luffy looked worried as he looked at him, but his attention was then distracted when he noticed that there was a small, white dog with beady black eyes looking back at him. He was standing in front of the building, that they soon realized was a pet food shop and Luffy happily rolled the cage over to him. Chow Chow, Nami smiled, remembering that little dog. I beg your pardon, Brook asked in confusion. The dog's name, she answered fondly, this is Chow Chow, he helped us out when we were leaving this town. This little guy, Usopp asked as Luffy continued to stare at the dog, as if trying to get it to move, even resorting to poking at it, but it was like a statue, it didn't move. You sure that's a dog and not a statue? Frankie asked as Luffy started pulling on the dog's face. Zoro, this dog looks like it's frozen. Luffy exclaimed as Zoro was now resting against a pillar on the building. I don't give a damn, he can sit there forever for all I care, Zoro huffed, gasping for breath. As social as ever I see, Usopp muttered as Luffy suddenly screamed in pain. Chow Chow finally couldn't take it anymore and bit Luffy with him trying to pull the mud off his face. Well, you can't say that you didn't see that coming, Sanji muttered annoyed. Luffy, quit goofing around and get serious. Zoro in the memory yelled angrily before he collapsed again from blood lost. Luffy finally managed to free himself from the dog and rubbed his face in pain. Stupid dog, he muttered. I don't feel good, Zoro moaned at the same time, looking like he was about to be sick. You both are so strange, Usopp muttered as Chopper shook his head. Of course you don't feel good. He yelled at Zoro. Didn't you see how much blood you lost? Would you just let it go already? He barked back in annoyance. Thankfully Nami interrupted the fight by finally tracking them down. Hi, Navigator, Luffy greeted cheerfully, completely over the previous event as she gave them a tired smile and handed over a large iron key. I only did it so we'd be even, Nami explained quickly, but she was still smiling as Luffy looked at it happily. So now I don't owe you anything, so we're square, okay? Weren't you the one who got him in trouble in the first place? Usopp asked her and she blushed innocently. Maybe, she said, but I'm cute so you forgive me, right? Of course I do, Nami swan. Sanji swooned before giving Usopp a dirty look, you hear that? You idiots shut up about it. But I'm just telling the truth, Usopp yelled back as Luffy cried out in shock and he looked down in time to see that Chow Chow had swallowed the key. For a moment, no one moved. How'd he manage to swallow a key? Robin asked in mild surprise as Luffy completely lost it and began to choke the dog as the other two stared at him. You damn dog. Stupid, 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 stupid dog. That's not food. Give me that key. Luffy, no. Chopper cried as he watched Chow Chow choking and change color from lack of air. He didn't kill him, Nami said looking around, and she spotted a familiar face coming towards them. Hey, stop that. Stop picking on poor Chow Chow. Leave him alone. He yelled back and got everyone's attention. Who's that? Robin asked curiously as an elderly-looking man with gray hair that has been arranged in 3 lumps and wearing brown armor covering up his street clothes. And who might are you, old man? Past Zoro asked rudely. Old man, he repeated irritably, why I'm the mayor of this town. Who are you and why are you hurting Chow Chow? They watched as the mayor finally noticed Zoro's injury and took him to his house for some treatment. Chopper sighed in relief, glad that Zoro was finally gonna get some medical attention, but that didn't last long because when the mayor came back out, Luffy asked him how he was doing. I told him he really should see a doctor, he said with a shrug, but he insisted that he didn't need to and just wanted to sleep it off. What? Chopper cried out again, you need a lot more than sleep for that. Up until then, I was always able to heal from a little sleep, Zoro said in annoyance. Could you guys be quiet? Nami snapped as she tried to listen. So this dog's name is Chow Chow. Past Nami asked as she petted the dog's head as Luffy continued to look at the dog. Why is he just sitting there like that? He said asking the mayor, sure is a lazy dog. He's guarding the store, he answered him casually. He's guarding it, Nami repeated in confusion before she looked up and said, oh, I see, it's a pet food shop. That's right, the mayor answered, and the man who used to run this shop was a very close friend of mine. As he got a bowl of food for Chow Chow, he told them all about how close the dog had been with his owner, and how that same owner died about 3 months before from an illness. In surprise, Nami asked him if he had been waiting here all this time for his owner to come back. How the mayor agreed that seemed to be the most reasonable answer. But I find that very hard to believe, the mayor added as he puffed on a pipe, gazing at the dog as he continued to eat. Chow Chow's a smart dog, he's probably known for a while that his master's isn't coming back. Nami looked confused as she asked, then why does he stay here at the store? I guess because he's got a connection to it, the mayor answered simply, a hint of sadness in his tone, it's his treasure. He's guarding it. His master left him with this shop and that's why he protects it. I've tried to take him back to my place so that he's not out in the elements but he won't take so much as a step away from it. Frankie was sniffing loudly, before he couldn't hold back the flood of tears, Brook soon following close behind as he bawled out. Oh, man, that's so touching. Frankie declared, he's pulling at my heart. To think that a dog would be here guarding his treasure like this. I can't take it. Chopper sniffled, understanding Chow Chow's determination. He felt much the same way as he fought to protect the castle from Wapol. That castle was the doctor's grave, and he wasn't going to let the same man responsible for killing him back inside. But as Frankie and Brook tried to recover from the story, they suddenly heard a loud roar and the ground was shaking with tremors. What was that? Brook cried, his tears drying up as he glanced around for the source of that sound. Chopper, Usopp asked cautiously. It's a cat, Chopper said nervously, a really big cat, and he's hungry. You mean a big cat like the Tiger Lord? Brook asked him. Not even close, Nami sighed, remembering seeing that lion. That lion was big, but that tiger could have eaten him easy. A lion? Sanji asked in surprise. I guess we should have guessed if they have a circus they've have a lion, Robin said, hopefully, we won't see it eat someone. Robin, would you quit doing that? Usopp demanded as the mayor began to freak out, grabbing Nami's arm and telling her to run. It's him, the beast tamer Moji. He screamed at her, almost dragging her away, leaving Luffy still trapped in the cage. Wait, you guys just left him there. Usopp shouted at her. What? He handled it, Nami snapped. Luffy sighed in a bored way as he spoke with the dog. Come on puppy, something's here, he said to it, why don't you just give me that key back? He doesn't seem concerned, Sanji muttered. Well, he's used to fighting giant animals, why would he be worried? Zoro asked. Just then, it came, Nami had been right, while he was big, it was nothing compared to some of the animals from MT. Kolbo. He was a lion with his fur an unusual greenish fur and its mane was a light purple color. Riding on its back was a scrawny man who was in a strange animal fur, the hat he had made him look like a teddy bear ears on the top of his head. Spotting the cage, he ordered the lion to go near him. I see that your friends have deserted you, Moji said as he smirked down at Luffy, once he looked down and saw who it was. And after you just escaped. Looking up, Luffy asked, who the heck are you? He looks like he has issues, Sanji muttered and they all nodded in silent agreement. I'm known as the Beast Tamer, Moji, a member of the Buggy Pirates, he answered with a ugly smirk. A Beast Tamer? Chopper asked excitedly. Don't get your hopes up, Chopper, he's not that impressive, Nami said rolling her eyes. Sure that lion listens to him, but as far as I know, he doesn't know anything else. Whoa, that's a weird looking animal suit you got on, Luffy said as he looked at Moji's head. Yeah, why wear his hat like that? Brook asked curiously. That was rude. Moji yelled angrily as he pointed to his head. This is my hair. You mean that's natural? Sanji asked in horror, his jaw dropping. What? Why would anyone go around with that? That's even weirder, Luffy said, raising an eyebrow. Took the words out of my mouth, Sanji muttered in agreement. You shouldn't assume that you're safe just because you're in that cage, Moji said, his angry look being replaced with a dangerously smug one. You must not know of my terrifying skill. There is no animal in this world that Beast Tamer Moji can't bend to do his bidding. He then jumped down from the lion, and tried to get Chow Chow to shake, which caused the dog to bit his arm and Moji screamed in pain, trying to throw the dog off. Ladies and gentlemen, Frankie said sarcastically, the world's greatest beast tamer. If this was a real circus, I'd want my money back, Usopp said looking tired. You nameless thief, I have no interest in killing you. Moji yelled, as if hoping that Luffy didn't see that last part, but me where Roronoa Zoro is before I change my mind. Even if he did tell that loser, I doubt that he'd let him go, Sanji disagreed. No way, Luffy answered bluntly and Zoro smirked. Moji lost his temper and finally ordered the lion, whose name was Richie, to attack already. At his command, Richie stomped on the cage, smashing it to pieces and bending the iron bars, but also breaking Luffy, who was clearly happy to finally get out. But almost as soon as he was free, the lion slammed his paw at him, sending him flying and smashing into a house, shattering it to pieces. Ouch, Sanji winced as they went over to see the damage. It took a few minutes for them to track Luffy down in all that damage, but when they finally found him, naturally he was just fine. Phew, that was intense. At least now I'm out of that cage, Luffy said to himself as he stood up and brushed himself off as he continued to talk to himself. Now, first thing I teach those buggy pirates a lesson. And then I convince Nami to be the navigator of my crew. Looks like here's where he starts to see you as a crewmate, Robin informed her as Nami smiled kindly at that. As if he summoned her here by saying her name, Nami and the mayor were there, coming out of their hiding place. Nami stared at Luffy and demanded, how did you survive that attack? You're alive, the mayor cried out in shock. Man, why doesn't he just tell them that he's not normal already? Usopp asked exasperatedly. Just got lucky I guess. Luffy asked in confusion. Surviving an attack like that isn't normal, I figured you'd be scattered all over, Nami pointed out, still not quite believing that he was unharmed, and seemed to be expecting him to fall over dead at any moment. Not normal, Luffy asked as if he never realized that he wasn't like other people. Why exactly did you decide to come to this town? The mayor suddenly asked him, wanting some answers, and how did you get involved with those pirates? He's always getting himself involved in something like this, Sanji added with a sigh. Comes with the job I guess. You get used to it. All I'm doing is searching for that chart of the Grand Line, Luffy answered with a grin. And then a good navigator to join my pirate crew. He turned around and ran back towards the pet store with Nami staring after him. I think that guy in the animal suit said he was looking for Zoro so I gotta go. Like I'd die by that loser, Zoro yawned as they went after him once again, but when they arrived at the pet shop they stopped dead and Frankie was now bursting out in tears to see the shop was now in flames. That monster. Usopp yelled out in fury, he and that bastard lion did this didn't they? Nami nodded sadly, listening to Chow Chow sitting in front of the burning building, and howling miserably. He's crying, Chopper sniffled, tears welling up as he stared at Chow Chow's bloody fur and scratches. It was clear that he fought and tried to protect the store from the lion, but even after putting his life on the line, he still couldn't protect it. Brooke sobbed open-heartedly with Usopp at that, but no one bothered to tell the ones crying off. They all felt a surge of rage at that after hearing that this place meant to that dog. That shop was all Chow Chow had left, it was the one thing he truly cherished, and now that was gone forever. Zoro was looking at the empty look on Luffy's face as he looked at Chow Chow. Suddenly, his captain's eyes narrowed in anger and he knew right away that Luffy wasn't going to let this go. It didn't matter if he was dealing with a human or an animal, but when it involves something that they are willing to fight to the death for, he takes it seriously. He's going after them, isn't he? Brooke said at once. What do you think? Sanji asked knowingly as Luffy gazed around, as if trying to smell which way that they went. Finally, he went running off down the road, and the Straw Hats could only follow. Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing this, Usopp said firmly, only wishing that he could help Luffy beat Moji up for hurting Chow Chow like this. It was a good thing that the two didn't get far from the shop when Luffy found them. If anything, seeing the box of pet food in the lion's mouth served to make them all angry and wanting Luffy to hurry up and beat the crap out of them. Moji stared down at him in surprise. Wait, I thought I killed you. What are you still doing alive? He demanded. Karma's a bitch, Zoro said darkly. He was a little surprised to see that Luffy answered him with a grin. I'm afraid you can't get rid of me that easily, he informed him. Moji grunted in anger as he ordered Richie to attack again. The lion dropped the food and charged ahead like a bull, but they all knew how this would end. I'm not going to be beaten by a lion, he proclaimed as she stretched his arms out, twisting them around the lion's face so that he couldn't move. And then, showing no mercy, he leapt into the air landing behind Richie, before being able to lift the beast into the air. Gum gum, hammer. Luffy screamed out, and like that, he left the lion in a crater in the ground, out cold. Come on, Sanji muttered, shaking his head, that cat's pathetic. The whole crew's pathetic, Zoro corrected for him, now wanting to see Luffy deal with Moji, who was gaping at what just happened, unable to believe what just happened. But there was no doubt that he realized that he was screwed. What are you? Moji demanded in terror as he stared at Luffy, who had his back to him, kneeling on the ground from the last attack. He was no longer smiling, and his face was shrouded in darkness, which sent a few chills up some of the crew members up their spines as he said simply, in a completely serious voice that they very rarely ever heard from him, well, I ate the gum gum devil fruit. Moji looked like he just choked on something. So then, you have devil fruit powers just like Captain Buggy but yours make you rubber. He cried out. That's normally what it means, Robin said, now frowning at Moji as well. Luffy didn't bother to give him an answer as he knelt there, his back still to him. Realizing that he was in deep shit, Moji tried to apologize, claiming that he didn't want any trouble. If that was true, then he shouldn't have started the fight, Brooke said coldly, knowing that he was going to deserve whatever his captain dealt out to him. Not so tough when his pet's out as he. Sanji asked, breathing out smoke. There's no reason for you to apologize to me. Because of you, that dog will never get his treasure back, Luffy said coldly as he finally stood up. There was no mercy in his expression as he looked back at him. And now, because of that, I'm gonna kick your ass. Couldn't have said it better myself, Nami said firmly. And before Moji could even move, Luffy stretched his arm out to grab him by the front of his shirt and dragged him over, Moji's feet dragging along the ground the whole time, before Luffy delivered a single punch and left him on the ground. That looked uncomfortable, Zoro said coolly as Luffy glared down at him and the lion with disgust before he went over to the box of pet food that the lion dropped before and started to head back to the store. That was something else, Brooke said softly. I don't think I can remember seeing Luffy-san so angry, aside from when he gave Horty the beatdown back on Fishman Island. If there is one thing that Luffy takes seriously, no matter what it is, it's when someone considers something to be a treasure, Nami said softly. If that person is willing to fight for it, he will too. And he respects it. That is something amazing, Brooke said, feeling his respect for Luffy rise even higher at that. They walked with Luffy, still carrying the food. Nami and the mayor were there now, watching Chow Chow sadly as he looked at the burnt remains of wood that had once been his only treasure in his home. Pirates are all the same, past Nami said softly, but with anger in her tone as well, they're all just a bunch of heartless bastards. They destroy everything that people hold dear without giving it a second thought. Just what happened to the pirates' world? Brooke asked sadly. It's been over 50 years since you sailed the seas, Brooke, Robin reminded softly, things change. At least here, Luffy was able to punish the ones who did this. As Luffy came near, Nami looked away, knowing what she was about to say. Her past self looked up at him and said, almost mockingly, oh, you're alive, pirate. You know, I thought for sure that lion was gonna tear your head off and end it all. The dark smile that had been on her face disappeared to be replaced with hatred as she shouted out, and I wished he had because then there'd be one less pirate in the world. The crew was staring at the past Nami, unable to believe that she had said something like that. Only Robin glanced at the present Nami, a knowing expression on her face as she walked over to put her hands on Nami's shoulders in a comforting way. Nami, Usopp asked as she refused to look at any of them. That's just what I always thought of when I heard the word pirate, she answered so quietly that they almost missed it. But her past self was full of anger as she ran to him, screaming out, "Maybe I should kill you right now before you can gather a crew and destroy everything else." In a blind anger she ran at him, but the mayor stopped her, trying to hold her back. "Come now," he said, "there's no need for violence." But Nami was past listening as she fought to break away. "Don't worry, Nami Swan," Sanji said to her comfortingly, "you don't have to worry about anything anymore." "I know," Nami said, finally looking back up. "But still, that means a lot to hear that, thanks Sanji." Out of respect, Sanji didn't go into any heartfelt words of love. But he did smile brighter at that. "Would you have really killed him?" Frankie asked, though he already had a feeling he knew the answer. "I was angry," she confessed. "Seeing how Chow Chow lost everything here reminded me of myself. Thinking back, even if I could kill him, I don't think I could. Even if it meant that I was ridding the world of another pirate." Luffy walked past her, heading straight for Chow Chow, muttering, "As if you could ever kill me." "Well, maybe I'll try it and see." Nami screamed at him. "I said stop it." The mayor yelled, "What's with you people?" But then Luffy gently put the box of pet food in front of Chow Chow. At that, Nami and the mayor froze as they watched Luffy walk around and sit beside the dog. "Sorry, but that's all I could save for you," Luffy said to him as he looked back to the remains of the shop. "That bastard lion ate all the rest of it." Chow Chow didn't move a muscle, much like before when they first saw the dog, but he was staring at the box of food. "I couldn't believe what he did," Nami confessed softly to them all. "He went and fought that lion just to get the dog's food back. To think that he went out of his way to do something just for a little dog, that's when I really knew that he wasn't like any other pirate." She smiled to herself as she watched Luffy say to Chow Chow how he could tell that he gave it his all to protect the store. "Oh, man," Frankie sniffled. "I love that dog." Chow Chow still didn't react at all, as if he didn't hear what Luffy just said. Instead, he merely picked the box up and started to walk away from the shop, no longer having a reason to stay here. But then he turned his head and barked at him happily. Now it was Chopper who sniffled a little at that. He said, "I owe you. And good luck." Luffy smiled at Chow Chow and, like he understood what he just said as well, called back, "Thanks. Good luck to you too, doggy." Chow Chow barked a couple more times before picking up his food again and they all watched in silence as he left, probably heading to where the other citizens fled when the pirates came. "What did he say there?" Usopp asked Chopper, who was rubbing his red eyes. "That time he said, 'I'll be alright. Hope to see you again.'" He answered and Frankie burst out crying. "Such a moving scene," Brook declared, his bony hands over his ribcage again. "My heart feels as if it's being torn up. Not that I have a heart to begin with. Yo-ho-ho-ho." No one said anything as they watched on, wondering just what could happen next. Luffy kept staring even long after Chow Chow was gone, and the mayor finally let go of Nami. She didn't look remotely angry anymore as she stared at Luffy, as if she had never seen anyone like him before. And then, she slowly headed to him until she was a few feet away. She stood there silent for a moment, trying to find the words. "Sorry about earlier," she said, and this time, they could hear the regret in her voice. "For thinking, you were like them." If Luffy was angry with her, he didn't show it. He merely looked up with a smile and said calmly, "That's okay, you've been under a lot of stress lately." "I'm surprised that he could see that," Nami told them all as she watched the smile appear on her own past self's face. It was here that Nami fully started to respect Luffy, that she could no longer think of him as something like Buggy or Arlong. It was almost startling the difference on her face as she looked. It was here that she truly believed that this was the moment that she began to see Luffy as a friend, something that she never truly had since before she had been forced to join. Luffy finally got up and dusted off his clothes, telling her that he didn't need to apologize. But as they were talking, they had forgotten all about the mayor, so they were all surprised when they heard him speak. "I'm pathetic," he declared, and he was shaking all over, though they weren't sure if it was from anger or fear here. "Chow Chow and this young one have fought so hard and yet, I, the mayor, have done nothing but sit back and watch our town be obliterated by Buggy and his despicable crew." Luffy and Nami ran to him, trying to calm him down, but nothing they said could work. Instead, the mayor told them all about how they built this town 40 years ago. How it was nothing but a barren stretch of land, and how they all came together to build it. Here, he proclaimed the town to be his and the other inhabitants' treasure. "That's something special," Usopp said, understanding the desire to protect your home even when the odds were against you. But almost on cue, Buggy had fired another one of his buggy balls, destroying another row of houses, once of which was the mayor's. "Ah," Chopper panicked, "you were still in there, Zoro." "Relax," Zoro said evenly, waving his hand away, "I didn't even feel it." But Luffy's eyes widened in horror as he just realized the same thing. "Ah. Zoro was sleeping in there. I'm sure he's dead now," the mayor said regretfully. "Zoro, you in there?" Luffy cried panicky, "Are you still alive?" Zoro was oddly touched by Luffy's concern. He wasn't used to having others worry about his safety, but it did make him feel as if there was something warming up inside him at the gesture. But then, as they watched through the smoke and rubble they saw Zoro sitting up, rubbing his head almost sleepily as he muttered darkly, "That's one hell of a way to wake a guy up. How come you weren't dead?" Usopp screamed at him as Luffy beamed happily, glad to see that Zoro was alright. "You didn't even have a scratch." The building took most of the blast, he shrugged as his past self complained about wanting a few more Z's before having to get up. "Shame," Sanji said sorrowfully. "Did you say something, crap cook?" Zoro demanded angrily. "How did you survive that blast?" Memory Nami said more to herself than to Zoro. "At that point, I was beginning to think that nothing could surprise me," Nami confessed before sighing. "Boy was I in for a shock." "Alright, you're alive," Luffy cheered. But apparently this was just one explosion too many for the mayor as he hissed to himself, "I refuse to let him get away with this. I won't stand for it. I can't let that scumbag destroy all that my people worked for these last 40 years. I am the mayor of this town. I will protect it and its inhabitants. This I swear to my dying breath." This last part he screamed out, looking ready to march to Buggy, which was probably what he was gonna do if Nami didn't try to hold him back. She told him that he didn't stand a chance, and he knew it. They could see in his face that he already knew it, but he didn't care, he was going to go and fight anyway. "A brave man," Sanji said, blowing out smoke rings. He knew he didn't stand a chance, but was still willing to fight anyway. Seeing Luffy and Chow Chow gave him courage, Zoro explained. He just didn't get what was about that rubber idiot that he could do this without even trying. It was just like there was some strange charm about him that seemed cause people to gather around him. But he's going to get himself killed. Usopp yelled, breaking his thoughts, the mayor breaking away and running down the street to where the last buggy ball came from. Even if it's Buggy, he doesn't stand a chance. He knew that, but he accepted it, Robin said, understanding better than anyone. She saw the tears in the mayor's eyes, he was ready to die if he had to. But he couldn't stand back and not do anything. He wanted to at least die protecting the town he loved. "Looks like the party's getting more exciting." Zoro's voice interrupted their thoughts as he came out of the wreckage to join Luffy and Nami and watch the mayor run. "Sure does," Luffy laughed. "This is no time for laughter," Nami said crossly, clearly upset, but Luffy was still smiling at her. "Don't worry, I started to grow fond of that old man," Luffy reassured her. "There's no way I'd let him die." "Well, in that case," Zoro said nonchalantly as he walked between them and started going after the mayor. "You're gonna go too," Nami called, before reminding him that he was hurt. Naturally, Zoro tied his bandana on his head, smirking evilly the whole time. "Yeah, so what? The injury to my reputation is a lot worse than the injury to my gut." Chopper sighed in irritation. "What were you thinking?" he demanded, which was causing Zoro to become seriously annoyed with all the yelling. "Would you quit nagging me?" he said, bored. "I will when you stop getting yourself into these situations." Chopper yelled at him, as if he was stupid. "Well, if we want to get to the Grand Line," Luffy said confidently, looking after the mayor's retreating back, "we better go steal that chart back." He then turned towards Nami. "You gonna join our crew or what?" he asked, holding up his hand to her. "Come on." Nami stared at the hand for a moment in surprise. "I still couldn't believe that he wanted me and his crew after all that," Nami told them all, but she was truly glad that he did. She watched as she looked back at Luffy. "I'll never sink so low as to become a pirate," she finally said, letting him know that she wasn't going to change her mind anytime soon. But then, she slapped his hand with a smile. "But I suppose we could team up," she said reasonably, "in order to achieve our common goals." Once they finished making up their minds, they went running after the mayor, and it wasn't a moment too soon. By the time they tracked him down, Buggy already had him with his disembodied hand, and was slowly strangling him, which Luffy had forced him to let go. "How dare you?" Buggy demanded furiously, "You can't just waltz up and treat me like this. I'm Captain Buggy and I won't stand for it. I can't wait to see what he intends to do about it," Frankie grinned. "Listen to me," Past Nami said to the boys, "all I want is the chart and the treasure and then I'm outta here. You got it?" "Yeah," Zoro said to her unconcerned. "I got it." The mayor was telling them off until Luffy knocked him out. "Luffy!" Chopper yelled at him, with Nami also yelling the same thing. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Why'd you knock out the mayor?" "Because he was in the way," Robin answered as Luffy smiled back at them. "That's not a bad idea," Past Zoro said. "If the old man had continued to fight, he would have died." They all looked down at the unconscious mayor. "It's for the best." But as Nami began to tell Luffy off, he ignored her as he looked up at Buggy and shouted out, "Hey big nose." "Oh, he did it now," Frankie laughed. He was right. Buggy looked furious and he bellowed at his men to shoot another buggy ball at them. Nami and Zoro tried to tell him to run, but he stayed where he was until he inflated and sent the ball back. The look on everyone's faces alone was worth seeing it. "You could have warned me," Zoro muttered as Nami gaped at him like a fish out of water. "That wasn't something you see every day," Nami said, amused by how stunned she was as the building blew up and the buggy pirates were all screaming as they were flung apart. "I thought for sure that he was gonna be blown to pieces, but instead he becomes a balloon." "All right," Luffy called proudly. "I got him." "What the hell kind of monster are you?" Nami screamed at him, glaring up from her place on the ground. "I think you freaked her out," Zoro told him coolly as Luffy looked back at her. That was when they watched Luffy explain that he was Rubberman and how Buggy survived by using his own men as a shield. That is despicable. Brook screamed at the idea. And you call yourself a captain? Things only got weirder from there. Buggy ordered, of all people, one of his men riding a unicycle to fight. His name was Kabaji and he was a tall, slender man with his hair covering half of his face, a large blue and white checkered scarf that covers the lower portion of his face and flowed down his front. While riding the unicycle, he went speeding over to try and attack Luffy, but Zoro stepped in and stopped the blade. Really? Brook asked, more sweat dropped than ever. He can't be serious, Usopp agreed exasperatedly. But despite his injury, Zoro was more than willing to fight him. Even with Chopper yelling in his ear about how he was going to make that injury even worse, he knew that he would do it all over again. He lives for the thrill of combat. The fight was dirty to say the least. Kabaji kept going for Zoro's injury, but he kept getting back up to fight. Why doesn't Luffy help? Chopper asked, staring at Luffy. Past Nami obviously thought the same thing and demanded the same thing, who didn't say anything, he didn't even look at her as he watched. It's what he does, Sanji said, recalling the fight Zoro and Mihawk. Even if they're losing, he doesn't get involved in another's fight. Even if someone could get killed. Chopper demanded angrily. I wanted it this way, Zoro snapped, shutting Chopper up as he looked up at him. Luffy understood that, if he had interfered, I wouldn't have forgiven him. Men and their pride, Nami sighed, shaking her head. She'll never understand them. You annoying little bastard, past Zoro was growling threateningly, which was never a good thing, you having fun poking at my wound. His eyes looked dangerous, as he cried out, go ahead. Kabaji rode at him at full speed, but this time Zoro didn't move as he let the acrobat stab him in the same place that Buggy did, ripping the wound open. Chopper screamed in horror as people like Usopp and Brook cringed in pain. Why didn't you dodge it? Chopper demanded loudly, looking ready to fight Zoro for doing something so dumb. To prove a point, Zoro said simply. If I lost because of that wound, my reputation would never have recovered. And that was worth almost getting killed. Chopper screamed at him, you could have bled to death. I didn't, so what's the problem here? He asked in a bored tone that only made Chopper more frustrated than ever. At least Luffy had the sense to keep the bandages on for longer than a few hours, but this guy is always practically trying to kill himself. Zoro, on the other hand, kept his eyes on the fight. His memory self was still facing Kabaji, refusing to back down. He spoke about how he refused to bring himself to lose to anyone who called himself a swordsman. Like you would have lost to a loser like him, Frankie said confidently. You wouldn't have a very bright future ahead if you lost to someone who rides a unicycle. But Nami wasn't paying much attention as she suddenly remembered what happened next, and glanced back in time to see her past self sneak away to steal the buggy's treasure. But everyone kept their eyes on the fight as it continued on. There were a few words of outrage when Buggy tried to interfere, but thankfully Luffy stepped in to stop it. In the end, Zoro gave it one last push of energy and took down Kabaji with one final slash. Yeah, Chopper screamed as Usopp and Frankie cheered. Go Zoro. I can't believe the Buggy pirates were defeated by petty thieves, Kabaji croaked out before his eyes rolled into the back of his head. It didn't really seem that tough, Robin said lightly, tilting her head casually, they really weren't that strong. We aren't petty thieves, Zoro in the memory growled before he collapsed, his words sounding a little flat as he laid there. We're pirates. Zoro smirked, and Robin understood. I believe that's the first time you called yourself a pirate. Took some time getting used to, Zoro confessed as his past self croaked out, Luffy. I'm going to sleep. Luffy smiled at him, letting him know that he would take care of everything else here. Leaving Zoro on the ground to sleep everything off, he turned to face Buggy. They exchanged words, with Luffy once again proclaiming that he would become the king of the pirates. As soon as he heard that, Buggy snorted angrily, then saying that he would be the one to do it. If Buggy ever became king, then I would lose all hope for the world, Sanji said, shaking his head. Can't argue with that, Nami said. Each crew member sweat dropped as they watched the scene. But what really got them was when he mentioned Shanks. I can't believe that these two were once crewmates, Frankie said, scratching his head as he thought about the captain that saved Luffy when he was a child, and this clown. He just couldn't see it. But that was when the fight began, and it was interesting at first. Luffy kept throwing attack after attack, but with Buggy able to break apart, it was almost impossible for Luffy to get a good hit in. It took him a few minutes to land a decent hit, and it only happened because Buggy had the nerve to badly damage Luffy's hat. First it was just a tiny nick on the rim, but what he did next made them all angry. He used 3 daggers to destroy the hat, and when Luffy heard Buggy insult Shanks was enough to drive him over the edge. Luffy was suddenly thrown into a rage that they'd never seen before. How dare he? Chopper cried furiously, wanting to beat up Buggy himself. Shanks is an amazing man. Red Hair is truly a man among men, Brook added. Shanks is a much better man than you'll ever be. You don't have the right to call him comrade. Luffy bellowed, charging ahead, and don't you ever badmouth him again. In his rage, he finally dealt a painful blow in Buggy's stomach. Oh, That had to hurt. Usopp winced, but not at all sympathetic. If he wasn't so interested in bragging and showing off, he could have avoided that, Robin said, having watched how Buggy's head went flying off, but still able to feel the blow. What happened between them? Chopper asked, not getting how anyone could hate Shanks. Luffy wanted to know that too as he grabbed Buggy's face, pulling it apart, demanding that he tell him about Shanks. Pushing Luffy away, he finally told them the story about how, while they were still pirates in training, he grew to hate Shanks. During a raid on an enemy ship, Buggy found a treasure map marking the location of a valuable underwater treasure. During the same raid, the crew retrieved a devil fruit, the Chop Chop fruit. When he heard of how much that a single devil fruit could go for, Buggy switched the real fruit with a fake, and then ate the fake in front of the crew so he could sell the fruit. The night that he was gonna leave and start his plans, Buggy was surprised by Shanks. He hid the fruit in his mouth, and before he could remove it, Shanks surprised him again and he swallowed it, forever losing the ability to swim, and thus also losing his chance to get the treasure underwater after he dropped the map into the ocean. It doesn't sound like it was Shanks's fault to me, Chopper said in confusion. It wasn't, Zoro said in disgust. Buggy just didn't want to admit that he was an idiot and blamed Shanks for his own stupidity. But come on, he tries to jump into the sea to get a map after he ate a devil fruit. Sanji asked, that's why I'll never eat one. As far as I'm concerned, it's not worth losing the ability to swim. Wow, so are you telling me that Shanks saved your life? Luffy asked when he realized that Shanks jumped in after him. No, Buggy screamed at him. That's not the point I'm trying to get across. It sounds like he saved him to me, Brook said. Buggy went on about how he blamed Shanks for everything, and how he decided that he would simply go after all the treasure on land if he couldn't swim. But he was now no longer interested in Luffy when he spotted Nami trying to make off with a large sack of treasure that she obviously stole from him. Buggy launched his top half at her with knives ready. Sanji screamed out a warning, but Nami had already noticed and began running. Don't worry, present Nami smirked as she watched Luffy find the lower half of Buggy's body. As soon as they saw it, they knew right away what Luffy was gonna do, and sure enough, Luffy had given a hard kick right in his own family jewels. Oh, Frankie moaned out. He didn't like Buggy, but still, no man should ever have the pain of losing his balls like that. Are they cracking? Chopper winced, I think I heard something break. Even Zoro was shaking his head. Luffy wasn't afraid to fight dirty if he had to, and that was more than effective. At least it shut him up, Robin offered in amusement. You would think that, Frankie muttered to her darkly, having suffered from her brutality firsthand. With Buggy on the ground in pure agony, Luffy warned Nami to drop the treasure and run, which she refused. When she claimed the treasure was now hers, Buggy grew mad but Nami refused to listen to anything he had to say. Furious, Buggy got back up and went after her again, this time when his body had flung apart into dozens of pieces. That is too weird, Brook said, watching the pieces of flesh float in the air. But even with his body in so many pieces, Luffy had spotted Buggy's feet walking along as he continued after Nami. Oh, this is gonna be good, Frankie smirked as he watched Luffy pick up a foot and began to do all sorts of things. From tickling to slamming his toes onto the ground, until Buggy finally couldn't ignore it anymore and screamed at him to stop. With him distracted, Nami swung the bag of treasure around in an attempt to attack Buggy, but he ended up grabbing the treasure bag. Neither one of the pair was letting go, so it became a sort of game of tug-of-war. Buggy attempted to strike Nami with the knives, however Luffy once again reminded him who he was supposed to be fighting as he came out of nowhere, and took him out with a kick, knocking him into the bag of treasure, ripping the bag, scattering its contents everywhere. This is certainly one interesting fight, Brook laughed as Nami stared at the damage, and quietly thanked Luffy for helping her. He knows how to take punishment though, doesn't he? Frankie laughed as he looked at Buggy's agony-filled face. He's having the worst day. He looks like a broken toy, Chopper said looking at the parts lying everywhere. But all good things had to come to an end. This time, when Buggy woke up and tried to reform himself, however Nami has already tied up several body parts and Buggy was left with just bits of his body. With Buggy clearly defeated, he was launched into the air by Luffy, sent him flying far away with his Gum Gum bazooka, ending the battle once and for all. There we go, Sanji said approvingly, glad that shitty bastard finally got his due for trying to hurt Nami. He only wished that Luffy hurt him more. Wow, that was one heck of a day, Frankie laughed, having actually enjoyed the battle. That was something else, sis. Nami smiled a little. Thinking back, I probably wouldn't be here if I didn't decide to steal from Buggy. I'm glad that it worked out this way. Still, if he wasn't so stupid and stopped bragging, he would have been a lot more dangerous, Robin said with a sigh. Overconfidence often leads to your downfall. And I don't think that I've ever seen anyone with such a big ego, Chopper said. Unless you count Usopp, Zoro offered. Yeah, unless you count, hey. He yelled angrily. Oh, Luffy-san, Brook said sadly, getting their attention, and they looked up to see their captain slowly walk over to where his hat lay on the ground, still badly torn up. I'm gonna kill Buggy for that, Frankie threatened, punching his giant fists together. Luffy stared sadly at his hat as Nami walked over to him and quietly offered to fix it for him. "Oh, so you fixed it?" Brook asked her happily. "Well, I know a little bit of sewing," she smiled. "I may not have completely been able to fix the hat up like it was before, but I did a pretty good job of it if I do say so myself." They watched as Nami then gave him the chart of the Grand Line. "You gave it to him willingly?" Usopp asked her stunned. "I know my dues," she said, frowning at him. "And he did deserve it, though now I know that he can't read a map to save his life." She glanced up to see Luffy's ecstatic look as he took the chart happily. "That was just my way of saying thanks for saving me," Nami said softly as Luffy then asked her again if she wanted to join. "I told you before, that no matter what, I'll never join a pirate crew," she said to him firmly, but a small smile appeared on her face. "But, alright, hanging around with you seems profitable enough. But just remember this, I'm only joining you, because it's in my interests." "I see," Robin said to her, "so it was more like an alliance instead of an actual membership." Nami nodded softly. Truth was, she was trapped in another pirate crew at the time anyway, no matter how much she despised it. She never planned on staying with them long anyway, but the longer she sailed with them, the more they began to grow on her. So that by the time she had to return to her home village, it had been almost painful. It had not been an easy thing to do for her to leave. Once that was all settled with, Luffy went over to wake Zoro up, who looked sickly from his injury. "You needed a doctor," Chopper yelled at him, not liking all the blood he lost. "Again, I didn't die, did I?" he said irritably. "I survived without so much as a scar, so stop bugging me." However, things sorta happened quickly after that. Just as they were going to go wake up the mayor, the rest of the citizens came back, demanding to know what happened. "Sure," Usopp groaned, smacking his forehead at that, "they come after the danger's over." "It was for the best. If they had been here, they'd probably get hurt," Brook answered. But soon, things turned sour. Thanks to Luffy, the people were now convinced that they were the ones behind all the destruction and the trio were forced to make a run for it. Luffy hoisted Zoro up, and dragged him along as Nami picked up the 2 sacks of loot on her shoulders. "Ungrateful aren't they?" Sanji yelled as they were forced to make a run for it. "They take care of the pirates before they're run out of town." But Luffy had a different view of it all. "This is a good town," Luffy suddenly called, getting their attention. "How could he think that when they're chasing them?" Chopper demanded, but Luffy saw Nami's questioning look and explained to her, "Everyone's so mad because of the old mayor guy. Something tells me that they aren't gonna listen to our side of the story anyway." "So true," Zoro laughed. "Yeah, when I think about it now, even if we did explain it, they wouldn't have let us go." Nami smiled happily with them. "Funny how Luffy can see the bigger picture," Usopp said softly. "I think he's more perspective than we give him credit for." Robin smiled widely as well as the trio made a sharp turn and ran down an alleyway, but they did get a surprise. There was Chow Chow waiting for them. "Chow Chow," Chopper called in surprise as the 3 leapt over the dog, who was now barking furiously at the townspeople, holding them back and giving the 3 time to escape. "Oh, so that's what you meant when you said that Chow Chow helped you escape," Brook said, admiring the little dog's spirit. "Yep," Nami smiled, as they continued to chase after the 3. "We probably wouldn't have made it back to the docks in time if he hadn't stopped them." "What's he saying, Chopper?" Robin asked as Chow Chow's barking voice started to fade. "He was saying, anyone who wants to go after them has to go through me first." Chopper smiled just as Luffy cried out a thank you to the dog. They all ran as fast as they could to the docks, now eager to see what happened next. And aside from meeting up with a few members of Buggy's crew who wanted to kill Nami for stealing their ship, it was uneventful. "Why did they run away screaming when they saw you, Zoro?" Usopp asked him, watching the 3 run in terror as soon as they got a good look at Zoro's face. Mosshead's face scared them. Sanji smirked as Zoro gave him a filthy look. "After Luffy was carried off by that dumb bird, I tried to follow them," he answered through gritted teeth, trying to fight the urge to kill the cook. "But these 3 were hitchhikers and I made them row me out here." "Oh, that explains it," Sanji said as they followed Luffy and the others into the 2 boats and set off, with Luffy leaving behind half of the treasure on the docks. "I wondered how you could have found your way. Someone helped you. At least I was there, you idiot." Zoro snapped at him as they followed them on the water. But as soon as they were leaving the shore, Usopp called for them to look back. They did, and they were surprised to see that the mayor was running up, but without his armor this time. "Hey wait, young ones," he bellowed out at them. "It's the old mayor guy," Luffy said as they looked back, and they were all sure that he was gonna curse them all out. But instead, with tears in his eyes, the mayor screamed out, "Thanks. Thank you." The Straw Hats all grinned along with the 3 in the boats as they sailed off. "Don't worry about it," Luffy called back, "take it easy." But as soon as Nami realized that half of the treasure was left there, she tried to drown Luffy while Zoro laughed his ass off watching them. Smiling, he leaned comfortably back in the little boat, gazing up at the sky. "Well, for better or for worse," he muttered to himself, "looks like we finally have a navigator in our crew." But as soon as those words had been said, and the Straw Hats took another step forward, the bright sunny sky and ocean disappeared around them. Suddenly the whole crew was back in the forest on that mysterious island, in the middle of the night, with no idea to how it happened. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is Warm Memories and Brotherly Bonds by RoseDragonWitch. Chapter 15. Enter the King of Snipers, Usopp. Okay, can someone tell me how we got back out here? Frankie asked, now annoyed at how they were suddenly back in the creepy forest they left. And where did the sun go? Do you think we have any more ideas to what's going on than you do? Nami snapped at him as Robin used her powers to see around the island and get their bearings straight. We're in a different part of the forest, she told them all. Not that far from the ruins. Apparently, we've been running around here while watching everything. But, Usopp began before he went stumbling around, staring at the sinister-looking trees and up at the scattered stars. We were in Orange Town in the middle of the day a few seconds ago. The memories are mixed with the island, Robin answered him. If we continue to search for the creature that's loose out here, then we will be following it through these memories as well. She looked to Zoro and asked, didn't you say that the monster hasn't taken on a form yet? Zoro nodded, that's just what I heard. Apparently it doesn't have a mind of its own yet. But it's now lurking somewhere, trying to find a new shape. At least that's what I think is happening. So, we just keep going through memories until we find it. Nami asked cautiously, and, when we do find it, what next? Lure it back to the ruins and kill it, I guess, Sanji muttered, looking around and deciding to head in one random direction. But the moment he went too far from the group, the dark island faded again so that they were out on the sea and the bright sun was overhead. Thank goodness, I like being in the sun so much better than the dark. Yo-ho-ho-ho, Brooks said happily. Being in that forest reminded him too much of Thriller Bark for his liking. He felt much better looking at the blue sky and warm sunshine, even if it was all an illusion. And it didn't take long for them to spot the two boats, sailing side by side, and coming towards them. I remember, Nami said smiling as she watched them come closer. She had sailed around with these two for only a few weeks and the time she spent with them had already been more fun than the last 8 years of being a thief. When they came closer they could hear some of the things that they were saying as well as get a good look at them. Luffy was, once again, sitting up on the bow of the ship and enjoying an apple as Zoro was dozing behind him. Nami was rolling her eyes at something Luffy had said and was telling them off for something or other again. There's absolutely no way we're gonna make it to the Grand Line in this condition, Nami said to them in a deeply annoyed voice. The other two looked back at her, wondering what she was going on about this time. The apple that Luffy had been eating had been reduced to nothing but a core, and he looked at it as he said, you're right, we're gonna need a whole lot more meat. I should have known he'd say that, Sanji sighed. Luffy finished swallowing the apple core and finished, eating fruit every day is for the birds. You can't survive on apples alone, Brooks said happily. I happen to like fruit, Nami told him darkly. We'll also need some booze too, Memory Zoro added before Nami lost her temper and threw one of the apples at him. Shut up you boneheads. She yelled at him as Luffy stretched out to grab the apple she threw and went to eating that one. That's not what I mean. She went on, before explaining, the Grand Line's a dangerous place. We'll need more than beer and meat to survive there. Not to mention that place is crawling with pirates who are also in search of the One Piece. And they all have ships that are way better than this. Yes, two little boats wouldn't have stood a chance in such rough waters for long, Robin agreed. And we don't have a crew, Luffy admitted with a mouthful of apple. We don't have a crew, we don't have any equipment, or even a real ship for that matter. Nami yelled, there is no way we'll ever make it like this. Glad that one of us had a brain here, Nami sighed as she watched herself. Yep, we'll need a cook and maybe a musician to keep us entertained. Luffy said happily. Sanji smirked, wondering if he would get to see his big entrance as well. Brook looked ready to sing at the mention of the musician. A musician? Zoro questioned before he laughed. What's so funny, Zoro-san? Brook asked at once, wondering just why he was laughing at the idea of having a musician around. It just seemed so random, Zoro answered with a shrug. So stupid, Memory Nami muttered to herself. I agree with you there, Nami nodded, agreeing with her past. But she was enjoying herself as she watched her past self went back to looking at some maps. Once she realized where they were, she said, a little to the south of here is a small island with some settlements on it. And it looks like we might be able to get a ship and some of the supplies we need there. Yeah, Nami nodded in agreement, already realizing where they were heading to next. And they did, they got a ship, supplies, she gave Usopp a sideways glance and smiled. And another crewmate. Fresh meat at last, Luffy cheered happily. And lots of booze there as well, Zoro said with a wide smile. Is that all you think about? Memory Nami yelled at them in annoyance. What am I gonna do with you two? I still wonder, Nami sighed sympathetically. Robin chuckled to herself, you three are fighting like brothers and a sister. You think? Nami asked as she watched them, hands on her hips. Sure, Robin answered, I noticed it a while ago. Our whole crew is close with each other, but you three seem to be a little closer than even that. So touching, Frankie sniffed, a giant hand over his heart. I never really thought about it, Nami laughed. We did spend a lot of time together before we met up with Usopp and Sanji. And our little family of misfits have grown into an even bigger family of misfits, Zoro smirked. Too true, Usopp agreed. Their ranks have members so vastly different from one another that it almost seems random if you thought it through. They have a doctor who is a shape-shifting reindeer monster, a cyborg who wears nothing but shirts and speedos for a shipwright, and an undead perverted skeleton for a musician. Not to mention the rest of the crew for that matter. Yeah, he didn't think that there was another crew out there whose members were this strange. Wow, having a navigator's great, Luffy said once he had finished eating and looked over at past Nami. It is, isn't it? Sanji swooned as he looked at Nami fondly. What island is it anyway? Past Zoro asked her. Memory Nami looked down at the map and said, I think we'll be at the north side of a place called Gecko Island. Usopp's eyes widened. You mean? Nami and Zoro smiled at him, knowing that this was going to make him happy to see his old village again. Something wrong, Usopp? Chopper asked, noticing the happy tears in Usopp's eyes. You know it, he repeated, smiling widely. I was born on Gecko Island. So this is where we meet up. We're gonna see Syrup Village again. Sounds like a sweet place, Chopper said, hungry all of a sudden. I am looking forward to seeing your home, Usopp-san, Brook muttered as they walked alongside the boats. What's it like? Well, boring actually, Usopp laughed. I remember how I used to run through the village and try to lighten things up. It was great. Oh, we'll get to see Kaya and my old crew. Your old crew? Sanji repeated in confusion. You mean you were in a pirate crew before you joined us, Usopp? Chopper asked, that's amazing. And who's Kaya? Robin asked curiously. But before Usopp could answer them, Zoro gave him a hard poke in the back of the head. Relax, everyone will get their answers if we watch. But keep your eyes out for the monster. But we don't even know what this thing'll look like, Frankie complained loudly. Well, I'm sure we'll know it when we see it, he snapped. As much fun as it is walking down memory lane, we still have to find Luffy, remember? They all blinked before looking down a little ashamed. The thought of seeing these old memories had just erased from their minds about helping Luffy. Zoro was right, they had to pay more attention. Ace was counting on them. And if they wanted their captain back, they'd have to start searching for the monster. They didn't say much else as they continued walking alongside the boats, listening to the three talk or argue, much like how a girl would fight with her brothers for being lazy. Present-day Nami couldn't help but smiled widely at that. But soon, they spotted an island with high cliffs directly in front of them. Luffy spotted them first and cried out excitedly, Land ho! At his cry, Usopp turned and smiled so widely that his face hurt. He couldn't believe it. After over 2 years at sea, he was finally going to see home again. He ran on ahead, his thoughts on Kaya and the Usopp pirates, and he felt like his heart would burst with joy at the thought of seeing them again. He was the first one to reach the shore and stared around happily. The high cliffs and rocky shoreline that led up a steep hill that would surely lead them to the village. He couldn't stop beaming, and he had to fight every urge to go to the village himself. But he reminded himself that he had a job to do. This wasn't even his real home, just some kind of figment of his imagination. But he just couldn't help the feelings of seeing it all. He shook his head hard. Someday he'd return home to see his friends again, but for now he had to pay attention. He was doing this for Luffy after all. Usopp. Chopper's voice sounded behind him and the little reindeer came running up, gasping for breath. Don't do that. Yeah, man, Frankie said, frowning heavily, we get that you're happy and everything, but let's try not to get separated in this place. Usopp didn't look at them however until he heard the two boats come ashore and their passengers get out to look around and stretch. I know, he said slowly, wiping away the stray tear. It's just, I suddenly felt homesick. Robin gently put a hand on his shoulder and he felt a little better. He smiled back at them all before he heard Memory Zoro groan out, it feels good to be on dry land again. So there's a village around here somewhere, right? Luffy asked Nami, as she was poring over the map. She nodded at the question and answered, yeah, it looks like a small one though. Tiny, Usopp grinned. It's so out of the way that pirates don't bother coming here. It sounds very peaceful, Usopp-san, Brook said. Yeah, he confessed with his arms behind his head. But still, I'll take life on the high seas any day. While it'd be great to see home again someday, I don't think I could ever really be happy there like out here. Well said, Sanji said, knowing the feeling. Luffy suddenly started drooling as he ran to look at the map himself. Ooh. Then that means meat. There's meat. There has to be a place to eat meat in this village. Just forget about meat for a moment, would ya? Nami snapped, pushing him away irritably. Zoro just yawned and looked around as the two argued, but suddenly they heard leaves up on the cliff rustle and Memory Zoro went to his swords. Careful, he told the other two, we're being watched. Luffy started to look around eagerly, as if someone would pop up at any second. By who? He asked excitedly, where are they? They got meat. Someone's up there, Sanji said suddenly, looking to the cliff to see several bullets go flying at Luffy. Zoro obviously saw them too because he called a warning to Luffy. But instead of hitting him, they were aimed at his feet and Luffy was forced to do a stupid kind of dance to avoid them, with Nami running and hiding behind one of the boats. What's going on? Brook called wildly, trying to detect where the shots were fired from. Relax, Zoro told them all, nothing to worry about. Almost as soon as the ammo was out, at least a dozen pirate flags rose up from the bushes and trees around the upper cliff. They were all identical with the skull and crossbones, except for the mouth was making an O shape, as if surprised. Luffy was waving his arms excitedly as soon as he saw them. That's so cool. Is this where we're supposed to be impressed? Memory Nami yelled in frustration. Sometimes I wish he would be a little more serious instead of impressed. Nami sighed as she watched Luffy act like a little kid who was promised to see a cool trick. They heard a familiar laugh coming from above them, and when they looked up, they couldn't stop the smiles on their faces when they saw him. Usopp looked almost identical to how he was 2 years ago. I am Usopp. Memory Usopp declared loudly, as if for all the world to hear, leader of the invincible nation of pirates who reign over this island. You stand before a living legend. The most revered pirated who ever lived. I am the great Captain Usopp. Awesome Usopp. Chopper cried, eyes twinkling as Usopp grinned up at himself. I can't believe it. Why didn't you tell me all that? Well, it never came up, Usopp told him smugly as the rest of the crew all shook their heads fondly at his antics. Chopper was just too naive sometimes, even more so than Luffy was if you could believe that. But seriously, Usopp whispered in amazement, was that really me? That's exactly how I remember you, Zoro agreed with Nami nodding. Yo-ho-ho-ho, so you like to tell stories even then, Usopp-san? Brook asked. Hey, look at Luffy, Robin said suddenly and they looked in time to see that the excited grin had been replaced with mild surprise, and perhaps, recognition. That's right, Frankie said quickly, he met your old man didn't he? Man, what are the odds? Slim, Nami answered him. Surely you would know that plotting an attack on this island would mean certain death. Usopp went on, my army of 80 million super mean pirate soldiers would squash you like bugs. Awesome. Luffy and Chopper both screamed in wonder as the rest of them stared at them in disbelief. In fact, Memory Zoro and Nami both looked like they wanted to slap Luffy upside the head. But since the present-day Straw Hats knew Usopp, they found this more funny than stupid. You expect us to believe that? Nami in the memory called up to him. Usopp completely lost any confidence he had as he gasped, she knows. Yep, she smiled wickedly, well, now I know. How could I be so dumb? Usopp cried out, now looking freaked out, not knowing what to do, I practically told her I was lying. I'm such an idiot, so stupid. Past Nami stared at him, as if thinking that he was some kind of weirdo. I really didn't think that you would give in that easily, Nami told him as Luffy looked horrified that it had been a lie. Usopp, why did you lie? Chopper demanded, looking angry. Well, he said jerkily, rubbing the back of his head, at the time I thought that they were evil pirates who were going to attack the village and I wanted to try and scare them away. I didn't really have a backup plan. But you think that you could have used a more reasonable number, Usopp, Robin said giggling. She was suddenly reminded of a story she heard of a long time about Pinocchio. A wooden puppet whose nose grew longer every time he told a lie. Curse you, you crafty pirate. Past Usopp cried out as he tried to regain control, 80 million may have been an exaggeration, and he stretched his arms out wide and proclaimed, but I have a great many men under my control. The Straw Hats all looked, and just through the bushes, they could see several kids there waving the flags nervously. Nami obviously saw them as well as she gave him a smug look and asked, my guess is 3. At that, the 3 suddenly jumped out, looking petrified as they screamed out in terror. She does know. All 3 of them screamed before they ran for their lives, dropping the flags and took off, almost crying. Chickens, Frankie burst out laughing. Yo-ho-ho-ho, I guess that they're your old crew. Brook asked them as Memory Usopp yelled for them to come back. Yeah, well, we were just a bunch of kids playing pirate, Usopp confessed. I had no idea just what the world was really like there. But those days we spent together were fun times, and unlike everyone else here, he supposed that he was the only one who had a normal-sounding childhood. Memory Nami felt that it was safe to come from her hiding place and was now examining something on the beach. A pirate using a slingshot, huh? She asked, picking up one of the pieces of lead that Usopp had fired at Luffy's feet, and blew the sand off. Well, now I've seen it all. Luffy laughed good-naturedly at that and called up, that's pretty cool. Shut your mouth, or I'll shut it for you. Usopp yelled, suddenly looking angry, as he pulled out his slingshot. I'm a proud man and I won't stand for it. He held his weapon up after loading it, this is your last warning. Or you'll get to see why they call me Proud Usopp and not Pushover Usopp. Is that clear? You weren't gonna give them a chance to explain. Sanji asked, suddenly starting to feel annoyed. If he hit Nami. I didn't fire it, Usopp admitted, looking up and watching Luffy pull his hat over his eyes carefully. You've already seen for yourself just how good I am with this thing. Past Usopp went on, so you know I can rival anyone carrying a pistol. True, but that won't work against a rubberman, Robin reminded him gently. Now that you've drawn your weapon, are you willing to use it? Luffy dared in a low voice and Usopp looked distressed by the question. Guns aren't for threats, they're for action, Luffy went on, and as his voice became cool and calm, not like his usual voice. They could only see part of one of his eyes under the hat's rim, casting the rest of his face in shadows. He looked quite unlike himself, like someone sinister. Are you willing to risk your life? That's what Shanks said. Chopper cried out, recognizing the words. Zoro laughed. Yeah, he wanted to scare Usopp. He glanced at his past self, who also realized this as he looked at Luffy for a moment before he began to grin, chuckling darkly in his throat. He loosened one of his swords just enough so that Usopp couldn't mistake the glint of his blade. I can assure you we're real pirates. Consider your next move very carefully. Why are you trying to scare him? Chopper asked them, not understanding. For fun, Zoro grinned down at him. We weren't gonna hurt him, he lied to us, so we lied right back. Past Usopp was looking more and more nervous with every word spoke. His hand was shaking so much that there was little chance that he could hit them even if he launched a ball. But they didn't need to worry. Like he said before, he lost his nerve and he let the lead ball fall to the ground just as he let go of the slingshot. He fell to his knees as he gazed down at them fearfully, but also with a hint of reverence. Just what were you going to do if they were there to attack the village? Sanji asked him. I didn't think about it, Usopp confessed, but I'd probably would have run away. Real pirates definitely have a lot more punch behind their words cause they can actually back them up. Memory, Usopp muttered, even from this distance they could hear his words. That's so cool. And I know that they can back up their threats, Usopp confessed. If you guys had chose to attack us, then we wouldn't have stood a chance. Hey, Zoro said to him as Luffy was lifting his hat up to get a better look at Usopp. Give us some credit. I know that now, he muttered as Memory, Luffy and Zoro both burst out laughing. The Straw Hats, even Usopp, were laughing with them as well. This was just so heartwarming that they couldn't stop themselves. You looked like you're about to wet yourself, Frankie laughed. Well, it did sound intimidating, he admitted, knowing that Luffy had scared him. Who knew? You could scare someone without doing a thing. They do say that words are the most dangerous weapons you can have. Luffy was done laughing and he called up, looking more like himself, I stole that. Usopp blinked down at him, startled at that. I stole those words, Red Hair Shanks. Luffy explained, a pirate I know. Past Usopp eyes widened, unable to believe what he was saying. What? You know Red Hair Shanks? You really are a real pirate. Wait, you gotta be lying. Do you really know him? Yep, Luffy told him, and what he said next really got Memory Usopp's attention. I know your dad too. His name's Yasop, right? Usopp's eyes bulged out at those words. In fact, he was so eager to hear about his father that he leaned too far over the edge and fell. Rolling down the side, and landing with a crash on his back. That looked like it hurt, Brook said kindly. Not really, Usopp laughed awkwardly. I was so excited to finally hear news about my old man that I didn't feel anything. It seemed like he was right. Past Usopp was now staring at Luffy. You're right, my old man's name is Yasop, he croaked out, getting up into a sitting position. But how in the world do you know him? I met him a long time ago. Luffy told him happily. But first, do you know any good places to have some meat? At that question, the Straw Hats laughed again. That was so typical of something for Luffy to say, if you want answers, then feed him first. Looking keen to hear more about his father, Usopp led them up the path into a small village. Wow, it looks like such a pleasant place to live, Brook said cheerfully. Usopp stared around him, feeling at home as they headed to a small restaurant. As soon as they entered, Usopp waved to the owner behind the counter and asked for food. And in the end, they watched the group of 4 at the table and began to eat. Man, I'm starving, Usopp said, his hand on his stomach as he watched his past self enjoy the meal. I agree, Brook moaned, his hands over the place where his stomach would normally be. If I don't eat soon, I fear I will be nothing but bones. Ah, but I already am, yo-ho-ho-ho. So how do you know my old man? Usopp asked Luffy as they all enjoyed their meal. I met your dad when I was just a little kid, Luffy said through a large mouthful of meat. Hold on, does my old man really know Shanks? Usopp asked in excitement. Know him. When I met your dad he was part of Shanks' crew, Luffy answered him cheerfully, so they were probably pretty good friends. Past Usopp looked ecstatic at the news and present-day Usopp remembered why. This was the first time he heard about his father since he left home. I can't believe it, he said in hushed tones, my old man, sailing the high seas with famous pirates. I haven't heard from them in a while, but I bet he's still with him, Luffy went on, he was a heck of a sharpshooter. He picked up an apple and smiled at it as if he was remembering something as he said, I'd keep him on my crew. And then, Luffy went on to tell him about how he met Shanks and his dad and how he would often watch Yasop demonstrate his incredible shooting skills with a pistol, like shooting the core from an apple or how he could shoot an antennae off of an ant at 100 feet away without harming the rest of it. Luffy also stated that he had never seen him miss a shot. Usopp was listening into everything Luffy had to say, his eyes were bright as he dreamt about the man his father was. It was such a cute scene. You'd think you two were old pals instead of just meeting just now, Sanji said smiling, pulling his cigarette out of his mouth. Usopp grinned as he watched. It was great, it was like we were best friends. I can't tell you how amazing it was to meet someone who actually met my old man. From what I gather, it was 2 years after your father left home did he meet with Luffy, Robin informed him. And that was around 14 years ago, Usopp nodded. But he was lost in thoughts about his dad. He hoped that they'd find their Luffy soon. Thanks to him, he was able to really see some moments of his father and he wanted to thank Luffy for that. Hearing about his father out on the seas and sailing with great pirates was a big inspiration, and one of the main reasons why he decided to leave home. If Luffy hadn't come to shore that day, not only would he have never found the courage to leave and go out with them, but he and Kaya would both probably be dead thanks to that evil Captain Kuro. He longed for the day when he would meet up with his father. He remembered back when his mother got sick and died when he was still just a child, how he used to lie about pirates coming, hoping that it was his father's ship and would come to take him away. He started lying for his mother, he created so many lies to try and keep her spirits up and help her feel better. That dad had come back for them and they would all be family again. Even when she had died, he couldn't bring himself to stop telling that lie. Maybe that was why he grew so close to Kaya, when she lost her parents. He wanted to do what he could to cheer her up and want her to live. But really, even if Usopp spent a year at Luffy's home village, he must have told him a lot about you if he was able to recognize you. Brook pointed out, he never met you before, but he knew who you were on sight. Well, you do look a lot like your old man now that I think of it, Frankie said, and Usopp beamed proudly. He used to go on, and on, and on about his son, Luffy said, with an amused smile. I think I heard enough about you to make my ears bleed. And let me tell you that he was a great pirate. Yeah, really. Memory, Usopp exclaimed excitedly, as if wishing Luffy could tell him more. I sure am proud of my old man. He went to live a pirate's life on the endless sea. He chose a life of real adventure. He looked up at picture of a pirate ship on rough waves, grinning the whole time. Present-day Usopp now knew that Luffy was waiting for the day that he would meet up with Shanks, he too was looking forward to that. And when they do face Shanks's crew, he would be the one to take on his father. Thanks for telling me more about him, Luffy, he added softly, wishing that he could have said that to him at the time. Maybe you can help us, past Nami said, causing Usopp to look at her. Do you know someone who could provide us with a decent ship? Or, even someone who knows how to sail for that matter? Usopp gave a small sigh. Well, it's a pretty small village. Sorry, but I just don't think we'll be able to help you. Did you really have to lie to us? Nami whispered to him and he blushed. Yeah, but it's not my money that we were talking about here, he pointed out. And the last thing that he wanted to do was make it look like he was taking advantage of Kaya. And my home village isn't known for sailors. We get a few fishermen, but that's about it. But there was a mansion up on that hill, wasn't there? Robin suddenly asked. I believe I saw one as we walked to the village. Yeah, but it's not like I live there, he said quickly as memory Zoro suddenly asked the same question. Hey, do you know them, Usopp? Nami asked him hopefully. With all that money, surely they can help us get our boat. Usopp's face turned deadly serious as he stood up and said loudly, you stay away from there. Everyone, both in the memory and out, were taken aback by Usopp's sudden hostility. Geez bro, what's gotten into you? Frankie asked. It's nothing, Usopp said quickly as his past self suddenly looked very uncomfortable as well and stuttered out. I just remembered something that I really have to go do. He grabbed hold of his bag of tricks and went straight to the door without another look back. Everyone knows me in this place, so, stay and eat as much as you want. I think those are words you soon come to regret after meeting Luffy, Sanji said to him. Well, got to go. Memory Usopp called back before he went running out the door. Robin, out of habit, kept her eyes on him the whole way until he was out of sight. She blinked in surprise. You were going to the mansion. Because I had to meet up with a very important friend, he said at once. I went there almost every day, though I've never actually been inside the mansion before. How come? Chopper asked curiously, and who's this friend? But Memory Nami had suddenly asked the boys where they thought he was going, which they shrugged naturally and went back to eating their meal in peace. It didn't take long for them to finish their meals in peace and were just getting ready to decide what to do next when the door suddenly banged open. The Usopp pirates have arrived. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. I believe it's those three who ran away screaming, Brooke said good-naturedly. The Usopp pirates, Usopp said proudly. But who are they? Sanji asked. Usopp grinned. It was 7 years ago when I met them, he said fondly. We had all kinds of adventures together. I see, you must be close, Brooke said softly. Yeah, Usopp said watching them. That's Pepper, he said pointing to the boy with dark green hair that was in the shape of a green pepper. And there's Carrot, he pointed to the freckled boy with short, spiky purple hair that covered his eyes and covered with a red hat. And Onion, he finished to the last boy with straight brown hair with a tuft sticking up at the top, and tiny eyes behind square glasses. Sounds delicious, Sanji said with a smirk. Maybe you should have called yourselves the Veggie Pirates or something. Wow, so you guys were like Luffy and his brothers? Chopper asked him excitedly. Usopp thought it over. Yeah, I guess, he admitted, we went around and caused trouble in the village and acted like pirates, but we weren't as close as Luffy had been with Ace and Sabo. Yeah, you were known as the village troublemaker, Nami agreed, and Usopp's happy demeanor disappeared at once. The three kids, meanwhile, were staring at the three pirates at the table with scared expressions. Captain Usopp is gone, whispered Carrot to the other two. Did they? Onion whispered before they all gulped. But they rushed at the table with their little wooden swords and looked ready for a fight. That is so cute, Robin giggled. Speak up, you filthy pirates. What have you done with our beloved captain? Pepper demanded, tell us now. Yeah, tell us now. The other two yelled with him. I'm curious to know just what they thought you guys did to you, Usopp, Sanji muttered as Luffy patted his stomach, chirping at how good that meat was. At his words, the three turned ghostly white and huddled together fearfully. What meat? Carrot gasped. These pirates are cannibals, Onion added, sounding close to freaking out. Oh, they didn't think that pirates eat people, did they? Frankie burst out laughing. Yeah, I doubt that Usopp here would taste good anyway, Sanji teased. Why is everyone picking on me? Usopp demanded. Well, Luffy's not here, so you'll have to do. Zoro smirked as the three straw hats in the memory all began to chuckle at the kids' expressions. Nami alone was having a hard time keeping her giggles in. What have you done, you savages? Pepper demanded in a scared voice as the other two hid behind him. Something very strange happened then. Zoro casually leaned forward onto the arm and gave them all a dark and sinister look, though the straw hats knew him enough by now to know that this wasn't one of his "I'm gonna kill you" smirks. If you're looking for your captain, Zoro said slowly before he gave them a twisted and psychotic smile that would make anyone else run for their lives, we ate him. You didn't, Robin said, smiling widely. Ah, cannibals. The kids screamed in collected terror, though for some reason they were looking at Nami. Why are you punks looking at me for? She yelled as they all fainted, staring up at the ceiling with horrified expressions. That's great. Frankie roared with laughter as the rest of Straw Hats and Memory Zoro and Luffy joined him. They were laughing so hard that tears were building in the edge of their eyes. You just had to say something stupid, didn't you? Nami scolded them both, but even she was smiling as the boys twitched horribly on the floor. That was mean, Zoro, Chopper said to him, jumping up on his shoulder as he laughed. But it was funny, he grinned back. It's not my fault that they believed me. Relax, Memory, Nami said, looking down at them. Usopp's just fine. But you JJ just SS said. Pepper stuttered horribly, pointing a shaking hand at Zoro, who went into another round of laughter with Luffy. Can't you take a joke when you hear one? She asked them irritability. Usopp was here until about 10 minutes ago. He said that he had someplace he needed to be and he took off. That's it. Right, why should we believe you? Carrot demanded. You rather believe that we ate him? Zoro asked, still grinning evilly, and they shut up. Why were you so determined to scare them? Usopp asked. Zoro just smirked back in a, because I could, way. Zoro, past Nami snapped at him before she looked up to the owner behind the bar and asked, hey, didn't Usopp leave here a minute ago? Huh? He asked in mild surprise. Yeah, he went back to his paper. Your meal will be going on his tab, by the way. Hey, thanks, Luffy called happily. You did pay your tab before you left home, didn't you? Nami asked Usopp, who blushed. Haha, I think I'll do what Luffy did and put it on my treasure tab, he said awkwardly, hoping that they change the subject quickly. Really? The boys asked, sitting up and looking at them cautiously. Yep, Luffy said happily, and I wanted to talk to him a little more. Do you know where we can find him? So the three boys lead the three of them out of the restaurant and through the sleepy village. The boys were talking to each other in loud whispered about keeping their guard up, that these were dangerous pirates, but after a few rounds of laughter with Luffy they quickly warmed up to him and were now laughing at how they thought that they ate Usopp. The captain sure is a social butterfly, isn't he? Robin asked cheerfully. It's hard not to enjoy yourself with Luffy around, Nami admitted, when he isn't breaking something that is. You really had us going there, Pepper said as they walked around to the side of the manor. Surrounded by a tall gate on all sides was a beautiful two-story manor that looked to be about the same size as the Sunny, maybe even bigger. Wide windows and elaborate trimming all over, and a tall tree on one side that stretched over to one of the side windows. Whoa, this place is huge, Luffy said, staring at it. It's a beautiful house, Brooke said in wonder. Ow, whoever lives here must be super rich, Frankie called, striking his signature pose. Yeah, Chopper said happily, looking at it. But why would you be here, Usopp? Usopp said nervously just as Onion answered, and if our captain ran off at this hour, then this is the place he's gonna be. Oh, Luffy said in surprise, and what does he come here for? He comes to lie, Carrot told him causally. He could have worded that better, Usopp sighed, he's making it sound like it was a bad thing. Why would you be lying about at a place like this? Sanji asked. To lie. Past Nami repeated with a frown, that's terrible. He's not a bad guy. Pepper said. He's great, isn't he? He added, looking at his two friends. Yeah, Onion agreed. How is a liar awesome? Zoro asked in confusion. The boys looked up and it was Pepper who explained. Well, Kaya, the girl who lives here has been in a terrible depression that's kept her weakened in bed after her parents got sick and died a year ago. She's very rich, but all that money couldn't help her recover from her sadness. Oh, the poor girl, Brooke said sympathetically. Chopper was suddenly wishing he could get a good look at this girl and see if there was something he could do about it. Can a depressed person really become that sick? Frankie asked in surprise. Yes, Chopper said softly, depression can be serious. You lose energy and become very weak. In serious occasions, it can even cause death. So the captain comes to tell his special made-up stories to make her laugh and cheer her up, Onion went on happily. Captain Usopp is the best at telling lies. Carrot added. Ah, you guys, Usopp said softly, missing his old crew more than ever. He wondered what they were doing right now. Wow, that really is pretty nice of him, Luffy said thinking it over. That really is, Usopp-san, Brooke said softly. I'm guessing that this Kaya-san must be someone very special to you. Hey, wait a minute. Usopp said quickly, waving his hands firmly in front of him, we're just friends that's all. I hardly knew her until after I heard about her parents and I came by to tell the stories to take her mind of things. That is something special to do for a lady though, Sanji said with increased respect. And here I thought your lies were all just pointless stories. Watch it, he said darkly just as the three boys all began talking about what they each liked best about Usopp. Usopp smiled at them, deeply touched by everything they said. In truth, he shared a deep fondness for Kaya due to her losing her parents and he wanted to keep her spirits up so that she could recover. He wasn't able to help his own mother and he didn't want to see anyone else go because of some stupid sickness. It was a great relief to see that she recovered a lot by the time that he left home. You mean she's not your girlfriend? Zoro asked teasingly. No, he yelled, his face a little red. So when he tells her those stories he makes her feel better? Past Nami asked curiously. Yeah, lots better, Pepper admitted. Chopper frowned as he thought about how the story the doctor had told him, how he had once been a master thief who was diagnosed with a fatal illness. When the rest of the world gave up on him, he wandered the countryside, searching for a place to die until he saw the serene vision of a grove of cherry blossom trees. By seeing those beautiful flowers, they inspired him to live and gave him hope. And he claimed that it'd been what saved him. Chopper always strived to believe that as well. Here was another case of it, Usopp telling his crazy stories and making Kaya laugh must have taken her mind off being sick and helped her to get better. He smiled, who knew lying can be good for you. That was all Luffy needed to hear to ask her for a ship, and then he stretched his arms out to attach to the bars of the fence, causing the three boys to scream in terror. They all knew what he was planning at once, even before Zoro, Nami, and the Usopp pirates grabbed him. Luffy let go and they were all launched high into the sky. That landing is gonna hurt, Robin muttered, shielding her eyes as she watched them go flying. I'm gonna kill Luffy when we find him, Nami muttered to herself, a hand to her forehead as if she had a headache. I don't know what he was thinking of. Chopper suddenly picked up a smell with his nose and said, hey. Usopp's in there, he said, pointing through the gate and at the thick tree. That's right, Usopp said grinning, I used to sneak in through a hole in the hedge. And without waiting, he walked confidently through the gate and gazed up at the tree. There she was, his past self was in a tree talking to a fairly tall, thin, and pale girl with blonde hair. Kaya, he felt his heart warm at the sight of seeing her again. Even if she was still sick, it was good to see her face. Wow, Sanji gasped, eyes turning back to hearts at the sight of her. She's so damn beautiful. So that's your friend Usopp? Chopper asked happily, but he was frowning a little when he saw her pale complexion. But she really does look sick. Yeah, Usopp said, a hint of sadness, for about a year she's been like that. But at that moment they could hear the echoing sounds above them and Kaya was pointing above Usopp's head. That was when the 6 people fell out of the sky and landed, rather painfully, in the lawn. Well, that worked out well, Luffy said happily, he and Zoro leaving the sidewalk cracked from where they landed. Yeah, real well, Nami yelled, both sarcastic and furious with him. Nami Swan, I hope that these 2 idiots didn't hurt you. Sanji cried out at once. No, she said, rubbing her backside at the memory. I've had a lot worse days than that. My goodness, Kaya called, looking at them, are you okay? Don't mind them, Kaya, Usopp said quickly and a little nervous, this happens to me all the time. That's just the price of being a famous adventurer. They're just new recruits who heard about me and came to join the Usopp pirates. In what crazy, mixed up world? Frankie asked, knowing that he wouldn't be joining the Usopp pirates anytime soon. Yeah, if I had to call you captain, I'd know we'd be screwed, Zoro said. Usopp sighed, hoping that they find Luffy soon so that they could stop making fun of him. Nope, Luffy said, getting up, not me, I came to see you. He looked to Kaya and asked, I wanted to ask you a favor. A favor? From me? She asked in surprise. Luffy nodded and tried to ask her for a ship when someone interrupted them. They looked up in time to see a slim man with glasses and slicked black hair with slightly green tinge to it. Who is that? Frankie asked as he lifted up his sunglasses. Usopp glared at him, his knuckles curling into fists, having forgotten about the fact he'd be forced to see him again. Kuro. Who? Chopper asked, noticing the tense expressions on Usopp, Zoro, and Nami's faces. He was Captain Kuro of the Black Cat Pirates, Usopp hissed, feeling anger roar up inside. I've heard of him, Robin said in surprise, Kuro of 1,000 Plans. Now I thought I recognized Axe Hand Morgan's name, they say that he was the one who captured Kuro. Wait, that ugly bastard caught him? Zoro asked her. It's what I heard, she said frowning, as she tried to remember. Apparently, out of all the Marines who were sent to capture him, Morgan was the only survivor and brought Kuro back alive. And was later promoted for his bravery. Well, that's not what happened, Nami said, glaring as Kuro came forward towards them. Apparently Kuro set someone else up to make the rest of the world think that he had been killed. But he'd actually been hiding out in this village for 3 years as a butler so that he could steal Kaya's fortune. He'd been planning on killing her since he came here. Chopper gasped as Brook said in outrage, how dare he? He planned on killing a young girl for all that time. Oh, if I ever get my hands on him, there's not going to be anything left. Sanji growled, glancing up at the girl and felt his anger grow. A sick girl like that. He truly didn't have a soul. Don't worry, Zoro said, still a little surprised that Kuro's plan made them have to deal with Morgan as well as this mess, we took care of him. Klahadore, Kaya said. Get out, Kuro snapped, moving his glasses up with the palm of his hand as he stood in front of them, I'll have you know that this is criminal trespassing. Yeah, he definitely has a stick up his ass, Frankie muttered. Ah, actually, Klahadore, Kaya called, these people are. Not now, Kaya, he interrupted coldly, you can tell me all about this riffraff after they've left. Riffraff. Brook repeated angrily, what does that make you? Why does she call him Klahadore? Chopper asked. Well, if Kuro is dead, it's not like he can go around calling himself that, Robin reminded him. Kuro walked forward, still messing with his glasses, now get out. All of you, leave now unless you all have some business with me. Alright, Luffy said agreeably, do you think you could help us get a ship? Certainly not, he yelled. Damn, Luffy whined in disappointment as Zoro clapped a hand on his shoulder. He takes rejection a lot better than when I met him, Sanji muttered impressed. But then Klahadore looked up and spotted Usopp hiding in the tree, Usopp. He yelled. And then he began to put Usopp down because his father is a pirate. When he asked what he wants from Kaya, money or otherwise, Kaya got upset. Stop this at once, Klahadore. She yelled at him, hanging dangerously out the window, apologized to him. It's even worse hearing it all a second time, Nami said, looking at Usopp and said, don't listen to a word he says. I know, he said determinedly. But I still don't like it. Hey, calm down Kaya, Usopp said worriedly, glancing at her. I don't believe there is any reason to apologize to this savage young man, Miss Kaya, Kuro went on silkily, my goal isn't to slander. Sounds like it to me, Zoro muttered. I am merely stating the truth, he went on before looking back up at Usopp, I sympathize with your situation. You must hate your great idiot of a father for abandoning his family and his village because of his mindless lust for treasure. Usopp, both in the memory and out, looked furious. You jerk, Chopper yelled. That's going too far, Brook said at once, you shouldn't judge someone based on who their parents are. Unfortunately the world isn't like that, Robin said softly as Kaya screamed for Kuro to stop. Usopp looked furious as he glared down at him. Don't you dare insult my father again. He growled as he jumped, using a hook from his bag of tricks to get down. After drawing it back in, he continued to glower at Kuro, shaking in anger. Klahadore laughed, why have you gotten so worked up, Usopp? It's times like this that you should do what you do best and lie. Tell me about how your father is really a traveling salesman. Or about how you aren't really related by blood. But he had gone too far. Usopp snapped and slugged him right in the face. The Straw Hats, other than Zoro and Nami, stared at Usopp. They had never seen him this angry. Wow, Sanji said, that's a first, I don't think I've ever seen you use your fist in a fight before. I was just so angry that I didn't care anymore, Usopp said, holding his head high. I didn't know who Klahadore really was here, but I wasn't going to let him get away with what he said about my old man. Captain, the Usopp pirates cried out as Usopp stood above Kuro there shaking. Sitting up, Kuro tried to claim he was a savage who resorted to violence and insulted his father again. Shut up, Usopp screamed out, taking Kuro by surprise, my father listened to his heart and chose a life of risk and adventure. Usopp proclaimed, I am proud to say that my old man is a brave warrior of the sea. You're right, I have been known to exaggerate from time to time, but I will never lie about who my father is. I refuse to be ashamed of my heritiage. I am the son of a pirate. Silence fell upon them all as Robin smiled at him. Not just anyone would say something like that about their father if they knew he was a criminal. Wow, you're amazing, Usopp, Chopper said, eyes bright. And I meant every word, Usopp said firmly, it's true, I wished that I could have spent a little more time with him before he went out sea, but I'm glad that he did. When you go after your dream, you have to be willing to risk your life. But rather than be impressed, Kuro continued to laugh darkly. For a moment they could see the pirate in him. Pirates are brave warriors of the sea, are they? Yeah, Chopper said proudly as Brook held his sword high in agreement. I think it all depends on what kind of pirate you're dealing with, Nami said as she watched them. That's quite a twisted way of putting things, Kuro said, getting back up and brush himself off. You don't seem to understand that you are living proof of his savage blood. Present-day Usopp's eyes narrowed. You run around sprouting lies and resort to violence when you don't get your way, Kuro went on. To top it off, you cozy up to the lady of the house to steal her fortune. He only hit you because you deserved it. Frankie yelled out, wishing that they could hear him. Yes, and Usopp hasn't asked anything from Kaya, Zoro said, sharing a look at Usopp, right? Of course not, he said angrily. I really only ever wanted to tell her stories and help to cheer her up. It couldn't have been any fun being stuck in bed all day. You're wrong, Memory, Usopp said at once. Your father is a filthy, no good pirate. Kuro bellowed out, treachery is in your blood. Of course you had such an evil scheme. And what does that make you, you lousy piece of shit? Sanji demanded, still steaming at the thought of him plotting to kill a lady. You won't let up, will you? Usopp screamed, grabbing hold of the front of his coat and held up a fist. Finally Kaya begged Usopp to stop when he tried to him again, and he listened to her. He let Kuro go before he was given another warning about coming back to the mansion, which Usopp replies is fine with him as he marched away with his hands in his pockets. Funny that this shows you care more about her feelings than he does, Brook said softly. Kuro didn't stop even when she told him to. I didn't want to make her more upset, Usopp confessed. That wasn't good for her. Did you mean that? Zoro asked him suddenly, not coming back. Usopp didn't say anything as he glanced up at her hurt expression. No, I was just angry. He knew that he would have kept coming back until he was sure that Kaya was on the road to recovery. That's really sweet of you, Usopp, Nami told him gently. Meanwhile, the Usopp's pirates insult Kuro for that, which Luffy agrees with, looking like he was ready to fight. But as Kuro warned them all to leave, Zoro had to hold Luffy back as the kids hid behind Nami in fear. With no other choice, the six trooped out of the grounds and Luffy went off to find Usopp. What a jerk, Frankie muttered darkly. How could anyone listen to that guy? He was a very good actor to have fooled everyone in the village for 3 years, Nami admitted, but that's all it's ever been. An act. He only pretended to care about Kaya so that he could steal her fortune, but he also wanted to make it look like an accident. But why would he want that? Robin asked. He could have stolen that fortune whenever he wanted. I'm sure we'll find out, Zoro said as they went following after Luffy, who was staring around, trying to track down where Usopp went. They walked on for a little while before he finally spotted Usopp sitting up on a high cliff that overlooked the sea. What's this place? Sanji asked. I used to come here a lot to think things over, Usopp said as he walked around to look at his own past self's angry and hurt expression. He remembered exactly the feeling, the rage and helplessness that he couldn't really make that stupid butler pay for the things he said about his dad. Yes, there were times he had been angry at his old man for leaving, but at the end of the day, he was still proud to call himself his father's son. And he looked forward to the day that he'd meet up with him to show him just how far he's come. He watched Luffy gracefully jump to the tree branch above him and then hung upside down so that he popped right in front of Usopp's face. Usopp jumped and told him off for doing that, saying that he wanted to be alone. Usopp smirked at that. The truth was he was glad that Luffy had come there after him. He remembered everything that he said about his father and it meant a lot that he had wanted to come talk to him, to agree that Butler was an idiot. The two talked for a while, about Usopp's father and how Luffy claimed he was a great man, which cheered past Usopp up greatly as he told Luffy that he always looked up to his father and wanted to be just like him. Funny that you're telling all this to someone you just met, Robin said to him softly. He's easy to talk to, Usopp shrugged smiling. For some reason you have a hard time not spilling your guts out to him, not that he always listens. That's true, Nami sighed. I don't think he really cares about listening to someone's past. He doesn't, Zoro agreed. He knows who we are, our pasts are all just extra. We're all a crew and that's what he cares about. But when Luffy asked Usopp if he was going to see Kaya, Usopp stated he didn't know, that having that stupid butler there was always a pain. That was when Luffy pointed out Kuro down the cliff at the shoreline with a man wearing strange clothes and red-lensed heart-shaped glasses. He looks familiar, Sanji said, looking over the edge. Wasn't he one of those stupid marines who tried to attack us when we left Alabasta? Yeah, Nami agreed. I just didn't understand how a pirate could ever become a marine. Hey Django, Kuro snarled, I specifically ordered you to remain inconspicuous. That doesn't mean sleeping in the road. I remember that, Nami said to Usopp as Zoro nodded. We ran into him when Luffy went to look for you, Usopp. He looked insane. Why was he sleeping in the road? Brook asked curiously. He's a hypnotist, Zoro explained, and when he tried to hypnotize the Usopp pirates he hypnotized himself too. They let that sink in before Sanji muttered, what an idiot. I couldn't agree with you more, Nami sighed. Relax man, I perfected the skills of a chameleon, Django said, striking a weird pose. I blend in. Like a zebra in a desert, Robin said as the crew all sweat dropped at the image of it. There's someone else with him and man is he weird, Luffy said watching them as Usopp forced his head down so that they wouldn't be seen. I've never seen him before, past Usopp whispered to him, who is he? I'm sorry I found out, Usopp muttered. They all listened, and Django confirms that the plan to murder the mansion owner is ready. Murder, Chopper whispered with a gulp. Kuro asked Django to not mention the word, murder, and to stop calling him Captain Kuro. Django laughed loudly at that as he told the story of how it was believed that Kuro was executed by the Marines 3 years ago, but he managed to fake his own death and somehow found his way into Kaya's family, eventually becoming the ill girl's most trusted servant who was also beloved by the village. And now he was having the Black Cat pirates attack the village and kill everyone. Django also found it amusing his former captain declared he was bored with a pirate's life, faked his death, and secretly settled in the village, but he understood now that it had been planning this for all that time. According to Kuro, all Django has to do is hypnotize Kaya to sign a will so he rightfully owns the mansion because Klahadore is not a member of the family and therefore cannot inherit her fortune otherwise. Once the task is done he must then kill her so that everyone thought she will kill during the pirate attack. Django mocked his former captain, stating that if it was him, he would just invade the mansion and takes the riches without the trouble. However, Kuro reminded him that would make him a pirate again. Django mocked him once again for asking for a peaceful life when he plans to kill everyone to get Kaya's money, but Kuro states he did not expect some things like Kaya's parents' death as they died unexpectedly in an accident. Why'd I seriously doubt that? Nami demanded, having not heard it herself, but feeling angry. He lived with them for 3 years and he doesn't care about any of them. This guy is seriously evil, Frankie growled, smashing his fists together, once again wishing he could deal with Kuro in his own way. Sanji and Brook were almost beside themselves at the idea that someone would want to kill Kaya like that. Damn, Sanji hissed, I hope Luffy kicked his ass. If not, then I'll do it. I don't care about this being a stupid memory or not. I am going to kill him. Memory Usopp was staring in shock at what he was hearing but Luffy didn't have a clue. What are they talking about? Luffy asked, clipping his sandals together, is it bad guy stuff? How could he not understand that? Nami demanded hotly. You really are an idiot Luffy. Past Usopp agreed with her. What? He hissed at him, weren't you listening to any of that? Those guys aren't just bad they're evil. He then told him what he knew about Kuro. When Luffy finally understood, he did the stupidest thing he could have done. He stood up and shouted down at them, hey bad guys you better stay away from that girl. You idiot. Most of the Straw Hats yelled, though they were all silently agreeing, having wished that they could have said the same thing. While Usopp was horrified at what Luffy did and tried to pull him down before he was seen, it was already too late. Kuro and Django spotted the pair up on the cliff. All of a sudden, Django held up his ring. Pay attention boys, he called, and watch this ring closely. He began to swing it back and forth as Usopp turned and hid, thinking it was some kind of dangerous weapon, but Luffy was staring at it transfixed. Luffy don't look at it. Nami yelled, he's trying to hypnotize you. Chopper screamed in terror and quickly hid his eyes at that as Django finished speaking. By the count of Django, you'll be in a deep sleep. 1, 2, Django. And then suddenly everything went dark and they were back in the forest in the middle of the night. What happened? Sanji asked quickly staring around. He fell asleep and fell from the cliff, Usopp explained, and went into details about how he was sure that Luffy had died when he fell and how he went to try and warn the villagers. Interesting, Robin said softly, it's rare to find people with such abilities in the world. Hypnosis is something that only a handful of people are ever able to do. And because our captain sees the world in a straightforward and simple manner, it wouldn't take much to put him under such a spell. You got that right, Zoro agreed. It still amazed him how someone with such a strong will can be so easily manipulated. But you just left Luffy-san there. Brook asked Usopp. I thought he was dead, Usopp tried to explain, and I had to try and warn the villagers. Everyone I grew up with was there. All the people I knew were in danger. Kaya was in danger. I had to do something. But he trailed off, but I might have just not done anything for all the good it did. He understood why the villagers didn't listen to him. Why should they? He'd been lying for years about pirates coming to attack, so why should they have any reason to listen now? But still, that didn't mean that he couldn't try. But why? Chopper asked quickly, you were telling them the truth. But before he could explain himself, the forest faded again and they were back at the cliff with Luffy sitting up, yawning as he looked around. Zoro, Nami, and the Usopp pirates were all there when he saw them. The 3 boys were looking freaked out that he was alright. Good morning guys, Luffy said brightly. I guess you finally found him. Frankie asked knowingly. We saw Usopp go running by, looking freaked out, and we went to find Luffy, Nami explained with a smile. We found him sleeping on the ground. What were you doing down here? Past Nami asked. I wanted to talk to Usopp, he replied brightly before he blinked. Oh right, the village is gonna be attacked by pirates tomorrow. Well, that's a blunt way to find out about your home is gonna be attacked, Sanji muttered darkly as Luffy explained everything that he and Usopp overheard. What? The three yelled, pirates are gonna attack the village. And they're gonna kill Kaya. Yep, Luffy answered coolly, putting his hat back on. That's what they said, no question about it. He sure doesn't seem concerned about it, Robin said. Well, it wasn't our problem at the time, Zoro said, and now that we knew, we could have warned the villagers and the entire village could have been empty by dawn. The three boys continued to look horrified as Zoro asked what made Luffy sleep down here. Luffy looked up and laughed, that's the thing. I don't remember going to sleep or getting down here at all. As the boys talked about Usopp going to warn the villagers, Nami sighed in relief, stating that the pirates won't be able to hurt anyone because they'll be long gone by tomorrow. Not quite, present-day Usopp sighed and they listened to them all talk to each other before they all headed back to the village just as the sun was going down, casting everything in a warm, golden glow. By the time they finally found Usopp, his back was to them and he was holding his arm as if in pain. The kids called at him, and he turned to look back at them with a happy expression, but for anyone who really knew him could tell that this smile was forced and looked painful. But as soon as he saw Luffy, he flipped out and ran over at him. Wait, he gasped, you're alive again. Alive, Luffy repeated in confusion, yeah, and I had a pretty good nap. I knew right then and there that he wasn't normal, Usopp sighed, I mean, who survives a fall from a cliff like that? He was sleeping the whole time, Pepper explained to him. Captain, we heard all about the pirates and their evil plan. Carrot added, but as they talked about warning the village, Usopp laughed said that he lied. Wait, that wasn't a lie. Chopper said quickly, staring up at Usopp. We all heard. Yes, Usopp-san, why would you tell them that? Brook asked, not believing what he was hearing. I don't believe my own ears. Not that I have ears. But why? Usopp didn't answer as he watched. It was hard to watch the boys walk away, proclaiming how disappointed they were in him for that. But there was something strange, the four of them standing there in the setting sun together, completely left alone. Usopp, Luffy asked before he had a sharp intake of breath, your arm. They looked, and that was when they realized that the blue and white sleeve he had was now stained with blood. Chopper screamed, that's from a bullet. You mean to tell me that someone shot you? Frankie asked at once. Usopp nodded as he watched Nami examine the wound and told him to come with her so that they could get it treated. In the end, they followed them all the way down to the same shore that they had spied on Kuro and Django. Nami had treated Usopp's wound and bandaged it up. Not bad, Chopper said as he watched her dab it gently with a salve. That's really the best that can be done, fortunately it was only a graze. But why would your own village shoot you? Brook asked him but Usopp shook his head. Because they didn't believe me, Usopp confessed. Before they could really make sense of that, Memory Nami declared that he was good to go. So, how come you lied to them? Luffy asked him seriously. Because all I do is lie, Usopp said after a few seconds of silence as he stared at the bandage. They also watched Usopp tearfully tell them that no one in his village believed him since he was a known lair who couldn't touch Kuro's clean reputation. Apparently, Usopp had told lies about pirates invading every day for the last several years. And why would you do that? Chopper asked. It started off as a way to help someone really close to me, Usopp told him softly, but I kept telling it, and now, they didn't have any reason to believe me. Past Usopp sighed as he finished telling them how he went to Kaya and tried to tell her, but she refused to listen and it was another one of her other butlers shot him and finished by saying, there's no way that anybody was gonna believe what I had to say. Why should they? Memory Zoro stepped forward, because what you were telling them was the honest truth. This is the problem with telling lies, Robin told him softly. Sooner or later, they're gonna come back to haunt you. You think you'd learn your lesson after this, Sanji agreed. I know, Usopp said nodding, but I don't need to lie so much anymore. I can actually do stuff now. They are coming, past Nami said softly, and they're gonna level this whole town. Yeah, Usopp said, but what am I supposed to do? They'll think I'm lying if I try to warn them. Everyone in the village thinks tomorrow is gonna be another normal day. But he gritted his teeth and stood up, a new resolve burning in his eyes. They think I'm lying and that's all they need to think. I'm gonna stop those pirates at the beach tomorrow myself. This is all my fault for being such a liar. He was shaking as he gripped his arm and said in a choked voice, I don't care anymore if they drive me away with brooms or shoot me in the arm. That was when the Straw Hats all realized that Usopp was crying. He was scared to death, but he was willing to put his life on the line to try and protect the same people who hurt him. Frankie and Brook were all sobbing as Chopper hugged their Usopp's leg tightly. The rest of them were smiling at Usopp who blushed a little but feeling a sense of pride of himself as he watched his past resolve. This is my village. It's my home, he went on, trying to hold in the tears, and I love everyone in it. I have to protect them. He said this part so quietly that they almost missed it. I can't take it. I love ya, man. Frankie cried as he pulled Usopp into a hug as he cried, willing to risk yourself like that. Yeah, Usopp said softly. Thinking back, I didn't know what I was going to do. If you three didn't come when you did then I know I'd be dead. That takes a lot of courage though Usopp, Robin told him, already, you were showing signs of courage. And it was because of this that the three in the memory also smiled and looked ready to fight. Past Zoro gripped his swords tightly. You're a hell of a good guy, he said, grinning evilly at the idea of fighting, sending your cronies away and going into battle alone. Oh, so that's why you sent them away. Chopper cried happily. Just so you know, Memory Nami claimed, I have dibs on all the pirate treasure you got it. So you want a little help or what? Luffy asked, holding up his fist for him to see. Usopp was crying as he stared at them, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. You guys, he gasped, drying the tears, you're gonna help me fight all these pirates. I don't get it. You guys didn't know me but you wanted to help anyway, Usopp said softly. Seeing how determined you were to fight made us want to fight too, Zoro explained softly as Luffy flexed his fingers. Well, you said that there's a whole bunch of bad guys, right? He asked. And you look scared out of your mind, Past Zoro added, looking at him. Usopp stood up and jerked his thumb at himself as he proclaimed, for your information I have nerves of steel. I'm perfectly okay with tons of bad guys. After all, you're looking at the legendary Captain Usopp. Brave warrior of the sea. His words lost their effect when they saw his legs shaking. Usopp noticed it as well as he hit his knees angrily to get them to stop. Damn it, he looked at them and snarled, alright fine, I'm scared. Why shouldn't I be? They're Captain Kuro's men. These guys mean business. I don't need pity. If you guys are sticking around cause you pity me, just leave. I don't need you laughing at me. Why would you do that? Brook asked, you must have known that you couldn't do it alone. Even if it was pity, why not swallow your pride and ask if it meant saving your village? Usopp lowered his head as he gulped. I know, it's just that he was so used to living on his own, to be the son of a great man gave him a lot of pride. To lower his head and show humility was a hard thing for him to do. To admit when he was wrong was what almost ended up costing him his crew after all. We're not laughing at you, Past Zoro said firmly, we're helping because you are honorable. And that means a lot coming from you, Usopp said to him gratefully, and Zoro smiled back. I meant it, if only you show that side more often, he teased. You really think we'd risk our lives out of pity? Luffy asked, half his face darkened. Past Usopp had more tears in his eyes at their determination. He rubbed at his eyes as he said, I don't know how to thank you, but we have to hurry. We still have time before the sun rises. And we've got to set up some traps. They'll be here at daybreak. The forest came back and they were all staring ahead of them silently. Like what happened with Chow Chow, if you're willing to fight, then he'll help you, Sanji said, a bit of pride in him as he puffed his cigarette. If you hadn't done anything, I doubt that they would have helped. No, Zoro confessed. I would have tried to at least warn them, Nami said softly, but like Zoro said, it really wasn't our business. I am glad that it all worked out though. Me too, Usopp agreed softly. I owe you three so much for your help. I wouldn't have been able to do it without you. Me and Kaya, and who knows how many other people could have been killed by that fake butler. Yo-ho-ho-ho, it's all so touching. Brook declared loudly as Frankie sobbed openly at that, pulling out his handkerchief to dab his eyes. And like that, the forest disappeared, but they were all still in the dark. Looking up, they spotted the four of them watching the sea as the sky was slowly growing lighter with each second. Dawn was approaching. Okay, Usopp said as he marched up the hill with the others behind him. At daybreak, the pirates will be landing at this shore to begin their attack. Zoro and Nami both glanced at each other, knowing that was far from true. But the only way they'll be able to get to the village will be up this slope, Usopp went on. The rest of the shoreline is sheer cliff, so they have to come through here. If we can funnel them in that narrow path, their numbers won't mean anything and the village will be protected. Alright, Luffy said, sounds pretty easy. Everything does in theory, present-day Nami sighed, running her hand through her long hair. Why do I get the feeling that something happened? Robin asked in amusement. Because it did, Zoro said grumpily. Talking about it is, Past Usopp said looking at them, but victory depends on our strength. What is it you guys can do? I slice, Zoro said darkly. I stretch, Luffy stated with a fist held high. I steal, Nami finished folding her arms. I hide, Past Usopp said softly before the three got him in a headlock. Well, this time you better fight. They screamed as Usopp tried to tell them that he was only joking. Do you really think now was a good time to make a joke, Usopp? Chopper asked him. I mean, it's always good to have a laugh before a battle, Usopp told him a little nervously. The truth was he meant what he said, but Chopper seemed to buy it as he thought it over with a determined look in his eyes. Fighting was the least you could have done, you shitty idiot, Sanji said. If my little Nami got hurt here, I'll gut you. Hey now, we all made it out alive, Usopp said quickly as the memory selves rolled out several large barrels of oil and poured it down the slope. I get it, Robin said watching it, it's rather clever. Not a bad idea, Frankie said. In a battle, it's always best to stay higher ground. Let's just hope none of us slip on that oil and end down there with them, Past Nami said as Luffy cautiously touched the oil with his foot, because that would be like sliding into a meat grinder. Your sense of humor is almost as bad as Robin's, Nami, Chopper gulped at the idea as Robin giggled next to him. Luffy looked up at Usopp and said, Usopp, I gotta hand it to you. You're pretty good at fighting dirty. Usopp looked outraged. Of course I am. There isn't anyone alive who can best me with a slingshot or beat me at the art of fighting dirty. You say that like you're proud of it, Zoro told him. Hey, I'm a sniper and a trickster. Usopp snapped back, I'm not some monster like the rest of you. This is how I fight. The four smiled as Zoro looked out to the sea. He whispered softly, it's almost daybreak, they're coming. They watched as the golden sun slowly rose up and above the ocean, spread a brilliant array of colors across the sea, turning everything into reds and yellows, causing the ocean to sparkle. It was hard to believe that a battle was going to begin with such a gorgeous sunrise, but strange enough, no one came. They all waited for a long time, but they couldn't even see a trace of a ship or crew from anywhere. What's going on? Frankie demanded, shielding his eyes as he looked left to right at the water. I don't see anyone. Think they all chickened out or something. No, they didn't chicken out, Nami sighed as she shot Usopp an annoyed look. Look, how was I supposed to know? Usopp demanded as Luffy began to whine. Where are they? He asked in a bored voice, I thought we were gonna fight. The sun's up, what's the deal? That's what I want to know, Brook said anxiously, I don't know, I've got a bad feeling about this. It's giving me goosebumps on my skin. Not that I have skin for goosebumps, yohahoho. Zoro shrugged. Maybe they overslept. Oh, come on Moss Head, Sanji smirked. Just because you're dumb enough to do something like that doesn't mean the rest of the world is. What did you say, Nosebleed? Zoro snarled. No, past Usopp said determined, arms folded as he put an end to the argument, they're gonna show up alright, and lots of them. They continued to wait, but still nothing. Finally, Memory Nami suddenly heard something. Her hands behind her ears, she said that she could hear something. Battle cries to the north. That was when Usopp remembered the shore identical to this one that way. Only we could get something like this wrong, Nami sighed as she watched them panic. If it wasn't so serious, I'd think that'd be funny as hell, Frankie smirked. We're at the wrong shore. Luffy cried out, that's not good. Well, this was where they had their secret meeting, so I just assumed okay. Usopp yelled back, I guess you should have kept both pathways guarded and set up with oil just to have been on the safe side, Robin said to them. Thinking back, that would probably have been the best course of action, Nami agreed, glaring at Usopp. How was I supposed to know? He demanded again. We need to hurry. Luffy cried out, before they make it to the village. Where is it? You have to head directly north from here. Usopp said quickly, if you run you can make it in 3 minutes. The terrain there is almost exactly the same, so all we have to do is stop them at the slope. I wish I went with him, Usopp whispered, thinking back to how he had been the first one there, and how he'd been stuck fighting alone until they showed up. Don't worry, Luffy said, we're gonna stop them. Oh no. Past Nami screamed in panic. What is it? Chopper asked her worriedly. If those filthy pirates are at the north shore, then they've already seen our boats. They'll take our treasure. She screamed. You're thinking about that? Brook asked in amazement. The entire village was about to be attacked, and all that you were thinking about was treasure. You have no idea what I had to go through to get that stuff. Nami yelled at him. I needed the treasure. I'll be there in 20 seconds. Luffy declared and went running off as Usopp began to moan about how the oil plan was useless. Why do I suddenly have a bad feeling about this? Sanji sighed as they gave chase as well. Luffy was chanting to himself the whole time, run straight north, run straight north. Luffy, you idiot. Usopp yelled, you're going east. His sense of direction is almost as messed up as Zoro's, Nami sighed as they continued to run. So that's how I got to be the first one there, Usopp said as he watched Luffy run around in a panic, getting turned around and end up running to the village instead. The village. He gasped, that can't be right. He said run north and I ran in the coldest direction, so I should be at the shore. You idiot. Nami groaned, slapping her forehead. How could he think that? Yeah, he's supposed to keep going up, Zoro said, knowing that north always meant up. North and up aren't the same thing, dumbass. Nami yelled again as Luffy turned and began running. While trying to find them, finally they heard the sounds of battle cries and screams, and he followed that. That was when he ran into Zoro, who was covered in oil, and looked ready to kill. Hey, Zoro, he gasped, you hear them? Yeah, Zoro gasped back, and if you're still alive Nami, I'm gonna kill you for this. What did she do? Luffy asked. She pulled me down into the oil and left me down there. He yelled, I'm gonna get her for this. What happened? Robin asked, though she had a very good idea to how it happened. A nasty look came over his face as he glared back at Nami. Nami here tripped in the oil slick and pulled me down, he snarled as she gave him an innocent look. I told you before that was an accident. She tried to tell him. You slipped and dragged me down so that you could get me out. He yelled at her. A worthy sacrifice, Sanji said without hesitation. You shut up before I cut you. He yelled at him. Finally, they burst through to the shore and saw the mob of Black Cat pirates running towards them. In a way to vent their anger, Luffy and Zoro went to town, sending pirates flying everywhere. Wow, these guys are no match, Chopper gasped eagerly. Did you expect any other way for it to turn out? Zoro smirked as he watched his past self kick their asses back down the slope, and finding past Usopp and Nami there on the ground, staring at them, with Usopp looking pretty beat up. Chopper screamed, noticing the blood dripping down his face. Usopp, what happened to you? I got beat up, he admitted shamefully, and after seeing how easily that these two dealt with them made him feel worse. But I bet you could take them all down by yourself now, Robin pointed out, and Usopp looked up, cheering up a little at that thought. What is this, Captain Django? One black cat pirate gasped out. Nobody one told us that killers like those were gonna be here. Another screamed. They couldn't have picked a worse day to attack, Sanji said with a grin. If they had just attacked one day sooner, then the plan might have worked. Yeah, Usopp said softly, silently grateful that the three had decided to come to his village for supplies. It's about time. Past Nami yelled at them. You think you'd be a little more grateful that we came at all? Zoro snarled at her and she looked embarrassed a little. I'm sorry, she said, though she didn't sound sorry at all. Is that the best those pirates can dish out? Past Zoro asked. Yeah, I was hoping for a challenge, Luffy gasped for breath. And you? Memory, Zoro yelled at Memory Nami, looking truly ticked off at, after leaving me down there you're lucky I'm not kicking your butt too. How dare you yell at Nami, Moss head. Sanji roared at him, she deserved it. Zoro yelled back at him. Usopp, you big bonehead. Luffy suddenly yelled, you never told me direction way was north. How is that my fault? Present, Usopp yelled as his past self stared in wonder. Staring from them to the beaten pirates and back. Could you have been slower? Past Nami demanded, glaring at them, what took you so long? Again, whose fault is that? Present day Zoro demanded of her. You got out, didn't you? She demanded back. Past Zoro looked furious too as he suddenly yelled, you're the one who pushed me down that oil slick so you could get out. It was an accident. Past Nami yelled, I slipped, you fell. At least one of us made it out of there, that's better than both of us being stuck at the bottom. Doesn't sound like an accident to me, Chopper thought to himself. It should have just been you. Past Zoro yelled. Again, I'm gonna kill you for how you're treating Nami Swan, Sanji hissed at him. Oh, shut up. Zoro snapped. Run straight north, he says, Luffy complained. That's just great. I mean, how am I supposed to know which way north even is out here, huh? He's hopeless anyway, Nami sighed. Shut up. Memory, Usopp yelled back, you're the one who ran away feeling so sure of yourself, ready to take on anyone. Well, I just got so excited I just started running, you know. Luffy said lightly. And how is that my fault that he got lost? Usopp asked the rest of them, who shrugged. How was I supposed to know that he can't tell north from south? While they had been arguing, the Black Cat pirates were all around Django, who had his ring out and was once again swinging it back and forth. What's that freak doing now? Frankie asked. Here, Django said in a slow and deep voice, stare deeply into this ring, now I'll count 1, 2, Django, and you will all begin to grow stronger. The wounds will heal and you will grow stronger still. So what is he doing? Luffy asked, finally noticing it, look weird. It looks like hypnosis, Past Nami said skeptically, he's trying to convince them they're stronger than they are. Like that'll work. Boy was I wrong, Nami sighed. How does it work anyway? Brook asked. To put it simply, he's planting suggestions in a person's mind, Robin answered him, he's trying to trick you into believing what he wants. When he tells a person that they are feeling tired, their mind hears that and it's almost like he's trying to will them to sleep. When he's telling them that they're stronger than they usually are, he's hoping that their minds will be tricked into thinking that as well. It doesn't work on everyone. And Luffy's staring at it, Sanji said worriedly as he watched Luffy staring at the swinging ring. Stronger, and stronger, stronger. Django cried out. 1, 2, Django. And as soon as he said that last word, the crew roared, their eyes were milky white and they were back on their feet, their battle with Luffy and Zoro already forgotten as they ignored their wounds. Their muscles seemed to grow and one of the pirates punched the side of the cliff with such force that it cracked and collapsed. As their memory selves started to panic and wonder what to do, the Black Cats looked ready to charge. Luffy didn't say anything as Django commanded them to go and destroy everything in their way. Past Zoro told Nami and Usopp to move while they took over, but when he asked Luffy what they should do, Luffy roared, his eyes were as white as the other pirates. You've got to be kidding me. Sanji yelled, that idiot. Actually it wasn't all that bad, Usopp smirked at the memory, he took care of all of them and saved us the trouble. Don't tell me you let that freak hypnotize you too. Past Zoro screamed in annoyance. Rather than answer, Luffy ran ahead, looking ready to fight. Past Usopp was having trouble walking and was forced to hang on Nami's shoulder as she cried out, he really is a simple-minded idiot. Great minds think alike, Nami smirked at that as she watched her captain continue to charge, roaring like a wild animal the whole time. Gum gum Gatling, Luffy screamed out, and like that, he took them all out, not having a clue to what hit them. They were lying bruised and bleeding at the bottom of the slough with Luffy growled like a beast. The Straw Hats couldn't blame the Black Cats one bit for looking up at him in terror, and they sure didn't blame them when they turned and ran when Luffy charged at them again. They thought for sure that he was going to attack them all again, but instead he outran them all and headed for Django. Thinking he was about to be attacked as well, Django cowered in fear, but again Luffy surprised them all by running right by them and straight to the ship. What's he gonna do? Frankie gasped just as Luffy grabbed hold of the bow of the ship. He isn't, Chopper cried. I think he is, Robin answered as she watched him heave against the heavy bow. Groaning furiously, forcing his muscles to pump out, Luffy pulled and they could hear the whole ship creaking and cracking. He's gonna destroy a perfectly good ship, Frankie cried, amazed and horrified at the same time. Memory Nami was cheering him on the whole way, that's right. Tear it down, she screamed out just as with one last heave, he broke off the entire bow. Amazing, Brook cried out, my eyes are gonna pop right out at the sight of it. Not that I have eyes at all. Breathing hard, Luffy looked back to the black cats with an evil look in his blank eyes. At once everyone knew what was gonna happen and the black cats were all crying in terror. He's gonna crush them all. Chopper cried out horrified. Relax, Zoro said, no one dies, at least not by Luffy's hands. He's gonna crush us with it. One of the pirates screamed, everybody run. And like that, they ran away, back up the hill as Luffy marched forward with the bow, shaking the ground with every step. The crew was begging Django to do something as he came closer. The vice captain was staring around desperately before he remembered the ring and pulled it out to order Luffy to fall asleep once he counted to Django. 1, 2, Django. He screamed out desperately. At that one last word, darkness fell, ending the memory so that they were back in the forest. The last thing they heard was an enormous crashing sound and the screams of the Black Cat crew. What happened? Chopper gasped, staring around, as if hoping that someone could explain. That idiot fell asleep and dropped the bow, Zoro explained in a bored tone, which landed on top of the entire crew. But no one was fatally killed, Nami added at some of the crew's shocked expressions. Everyone was so freaked out that I think they would have run for the hills if Kuro didn't show up. Wait, Kuro showed up? Frankie asked, still recovering from what he just saw. Yeah, Usopp said. Zoro was forced to fight 2 other members of the Black Cats who stole 2 of his swords and Zoro stood on Usopp's foot. Shut up. Wait, you mean Moss Head had his sword stolen by some freaks like them? Sanji laughed. It was funny now that I think about it, Nami added as Zoro shot her another annoyed look. I think they were called the Nyaban brothers or something like that. They pretended to be cowards and Zoro believed that it would be an easy fight but it turned out to be a hoax, and he ends up having 2 of his swords stolen. That was when Kuro showed up, Usopp went on, and those 2 brothers tried to attack him. They attacked their former captain. Brook asked softly. Well, he was insulting them, Zoro added, calling them weak and they went after him for saying that. But he didn't grow weak at all, Nami sighed, he got behind them and threatened to kill them both. But he gave them 5 minutes to kill all of us or he'd kill them. Not actually a close-knit group, huh? Frankie asked with a deadpan expression. Crewmates shouldn't treat each other like that though. Brook called. I'm afraid that there are a lot of crews just like that, Robin answered grimly, knowing that all too well. And Luffy slept through all this? Sanji asked exasperatedly. Yep, Zoro muttered, jerking his thumb at Nami, until she went and stepped on his face. Almost as soon as the words were out of his mouth did everything came back at once. They were still on the shore of the cliff just like in the last memory. Only this time, Luffy was lying crushed underneath the bow with Nami stepping on his face. But what she didn't realize was that the same ring that Django used to hypnotize people was flying towards her, the blade glinting dangerous in the light. Nami! Sanji screamed, dropping his cigarette as he ran forward to intercept the attack. Hey, stop that, Luffy grumbled, from under Nami's foot. But Nami didn't notice it as she stared back at the ring, unable to turn away. Just then, Luffy grabbed hold of Nami's ankle and got up, causing her to trip. Nami! He yelled, you cannot just go around stepping on people's fact, but he didn't finish that sentence for the blade missed Nami and went right into Luffy's face. That's either best timing, or the worst in the world, I can't tell, Sanji whispered as he watched Nami fall and Luffy's body get forced back. It didn't really hit him, did he? Chopper asked fearfully. That ring looked sharp enough to have done a lot of damage. And Luffy's weakness was against sharp objects. Luffy. Past Nami whispered from the ground, holding onto her shoulder as she watched. But when Luffy stood upright they could see that he had caught the ring by his teeth, and by biting down on it, he shattered it. Luffy. Nami cried happily, but the side of Luffy's mouth was cut and he let out a loud scream of pain when he touched it. Big baby, Sanji said shaking his head. He has no problem getting beaten to within an inch of his life, but a little cut and he's crying. Robin shrugged, just another mystery I suppose. But the Black Cat pirates were all staring at him in fear, and they all knew that they could only be terrified at the thought of being forced to deal with him again. At the moment, Luffy's attention was focused only on Nami. Hey, that hurt you jerk. Why'd you do that? Somehow convinced that she was responsible for throwing that ring. Looking ticked off she screamed back, hey, sleeping beauty, that wasn't me. But then her eyes suddenly glazed over, it wasn't me. And then she fell back onto the sand, holding onto her right shoulder, that they suddenly realized was bleeding. Ah! Sanji screamed out in horror. Oh no, Nami, what happened to you? That stupid hypnotist got me. Present-day Nami sighed and Sanji looked ready to kill. How dare he? He growled furiously, suddenly burning hot, that shitty bastard. How dare he? I'm gonna kill him. He then ran forward to kick that bastard into next week, but he only roared in outrage when his leg went right through him. Screaming in fury, he screamed profanities at the sky, causing some members to cautiously back away from him in fear. Luffy's anger faded almost at once when he saw the wound. Are you okay, Nami? He asked worriedly, did you get hurt? Let me see it. It's nothing, she said, shaking her head, but blood was soaking her sleeve. I'm fine. She let him know that she did everything she could, and asked Luffy to fight for her treasure, which Luffy sighed, as if being told to take out the garbage. You sure spoiled the good mood, Frankie muttered watching Luffy pick up his hat. You never change, sis. Well, the treasure was my greatest priority at the time, she said firmly as Luffy put the hat back up and told her he'd do it, but he sounded like a child forced to do his chores to keep his mother happy. Meanwhile, Zoro was facing an overweight man who wears an outfit that made him look like a black and white cat, and he even had a ridiculously large bell around his neck. Django was still at the bottom of the slope and was staring at the broken ring that now laid on the ground, and Usopp was lying near the top of the hill nursing his injuries. But everyone's attention was focused on Kuro the butler, who was standing up on the hill, overlooking the scene with the strange weapons on his hands. They looked like fury gloves with full-length katana blades at the end of each finger. 1 minute, and counting, Kuro said, in a bored tone. He's kidding, right? Frankie asked, does he honestly think that these losers could beat you guys in 1 minute? The pirates apparently thought the same thing as they cowered away from Luffy, as if thinking that he would kill any of them if he got too close. I'm coming for you, Straw Hat. Django called as the fat cat fought with Zoro. You've got to be kidding me. Chopper said, and the whole crew sweat dropped. Is this really the best that the East Blue had to offer? Frankie muttered. Well, the East Blue is known as the weakest for a reason, Robin offered. But it was too late, their time was up. Kuro declared that their 5 minutes were done and he held up his claws, ready to kill everyone on the slope. What he didn't notice was that there was someone running towards them. Hey, isn't that Kaya? Chopper cried in panic just as Kuro's eyes widened angrily. Don't ever sneak up on me. Kuro yelled, stretching his fingers and making his weapons clink together, unless you want to die. He's gonna kill her. Brook screamed, looking ready to run forward with Sanji, but Zoro held them both back. Relax, he said, Usopp handles it. As soon as past Usopp realized the danger, he jumped up and went running in. The Straw Hats all stared as Usopp managed to tackle her to the ground before Kuro could slash her. Nice save, Usopp. Chopper cheered, go, go, go. Damn, why can't you be this brave when you fight with us? Frankie asked in a teasing voice. Sanji calmed down as Usopp and Frankie began arguing. His respect for Usopp just went up. Anyone who would risk their lives for a woman deserved that from him. No, Usopp, Kaya gasped as he now laid there. Are you okay? Were you hurt? Brook called worriedly as Chopper went running up the hill to get a better look at him. No, he missed, Usopp said, thinking of those wounds, but I got hurt before and it wasn't easy to move around after a beating like that. Kaya, what are you doing here? Past Usopp croaked out, looking up at her. Oh, Usopp, I'm so sorry, she said mournfully, and she truly did sound like it. I don't know how you'll ever forgive me. I just couldn't believe it. That Clawhador is a scheming, murdering pirate. How did she find out? I thought she didn't believe you. Robin said to him. Last night, Kuro attacked another servant but he survived and told her what happened, Usopp explained as he thought back to what Kaya told him. That was dumb, Zoro said rolling his eye, at least wait until the attack before doing something like that in case he did live. Never mind that, memory, Usopp gasped and Kaya's eyes welled up with tears. Why are you here? He went on, Kaya, your life is in danger. I told you to run somewhere safe. I have to respect you here, Usopp-san, Brook said softly, you were willing to die to protect that girl. If I didn't do it, who would? Usopp asked. What I don't get is why. Why would she come here? If she knew what was going on, why? She may look fragile, but I guess she's stronger than she looks, Robin smiled softly. It's like they say, it's not the size of the dog in the fight that matters, but the size of the fight in the dog, Frankie grinned. I won't. You're still here fighting. I won't run. Kaya screamed out, and tearfully she said next, you fought for me after I treated you so badly. Look at you, you're barely alive but you're still so brave. That's so sweet, Brook said tearfully. Sanji was suddenly frowning. How'd that idiot get such a hot girl crying over him like that? Just what was Kaya about to finish saying? Kuro suddenly spoke up. This is no place for a lady. Madam, please leave. How dare he? Sanji snarled, flames licking his legs again at the thought. That bastard had lived with that girl for 3 years and betrayed. He'd been plotting to get her killed probably since the day they met, and he suddenly had the gall to use that tone. Kaya's face froze before replaced by rage. Glaring fiercely at Kuro, she yelled at him to stop. Kuro's face looked mildly annoyed as she stood up and told him that she would give him her fortune. That he could have everything if he left the village alone and to never come back. Kuro then admitted to Kaya that he did want her money, but what he wanted more than that was peace. He then told her that despite her plea, the Black Cat pirates will still attack Syrup Village and kill her. The Straw Hats were taken aback that Kaya then pulled a pistol from her coat and pointed it at Kuro as Usopp pleaded for her to just run. But she says that he wasn't Klahadore anymore. She threatened to kill him if Kuro and the rest of the Black Cat pirates don't leave Gecko Island this instant. You go girl. Frankie cheered on. You tell him, Kaya. Chopper added loudly. Kuro sighed as he pulled one of the cat claws off and told her that she became stronger over the last 3 years, that she wasn't that little girl that he took care. He then recollects the events of the last 3 years with her, the things they did together in a gentle voice that brought her to tears. That's a dirty trick, Usopp growled, knowing that Kaya wouldn't be able to forget all that easily. He knows that, Robin said softly, by bringing up all those memories, he's trying to make her second guess herself. He's getting to her. Kaya's hands were shaking by the time that Kuro grabbed hold of the gun. But then, with a change of tone, he calls the events stupid things, and confesses that everything he did for her was merely an act that he'd been plotting for her today, the day she dies. That by spending those years with her was an insult to his pride. He took the gun from her and let it drop to the ground as tears burned in Kaya's eyes. His face full of fury, Usopp grabbed the dropped pistol and tried to shoot him, but Kuro used what he called his pussyfoot maneuver to reappear behind him with his cat claws gloves back on. He said that he was gonna kill him to make him pay for punching him, but his attempts were stopped by Luffy, who hit him from the bottom of the slope with his gum-gum pistol, sending him to the ground. Luffy then swore that Kuro was in for a bad day if he hated getting hit. Yeah, take him out, Luffy. Chopper screamed out as Sanji wholeheartedly agreed as he looked to Kaya's tear-stained face. Damn Kuro, how dare he hurt a lady like this? Any man who causes tears to a woman like that doesn't deserve to live. The Black Cat pirates were freaking out as they stared at Luffy, who held up his fingers and cracked them all threateningly. He was just getting started, and with everyone's attention focused on him, the Straw Hats almost missed Nami going to search the ship to search for the pirates' treasure despite her wounded shoulder. But at that moment, the Usopp pirates arrive and began a merciless beating on Kuro's face as hard as they can with a shovel, a frying pan, and a bat, yelling out insults. They're gonna get killed, Chopper screamed out. I can't tell if they're being really brave or nuts, Frankie said, staring at the little guys with sweat coming down his face. Usopp and Kaya tried to scream at them to stay away, but they refused to listen, too busy at beating Kuro's face until they were exhausted and decided that they would let him off with a warning. They're dead, Robin muttered. Do you have to say that so bluntly? Usopp yelled at her as the Usopp pirates went to Usopp and they argue with him for not telling them about the fight. Usopp begs them to run away, but the kids refuse to, saying it will only shame the Usopp pirates if they ran in fear. They look scared to me, Brooke said softly as Kuro suddenly got back up, making the kids scream in terror. But to their surprise, Kuro ignored them and went straight to Usopp and with a hard kick, slammed him to the ground. Chopper screamed, "Oh no." And Usopp's injuries already look bad. They really weren't that bad, Usopp confessed to him softly, putting a hand on his shoulder. Don't worry, I recovered fast from this. But Kuro's attention was now back on Luffy as he asked if he has eaten a devil fruit, which Luffy admitted. This news frightens the Black Cat pirates even more and looked ready to run until Kuro ordered Django to take care of Kaya and the Usopp pirates while he dealt with Luffy. Memory Zoro tried to stop him, but the fat pirate named Butchie charged forward to attack him, leaving a crater in the ground where he landed and even destroying part of the wall. So with Zoro focused on dealing with him, Django went to Kaya. Damn, they better do something or Kaya-san's in big trouble, Sanji gasped, wishing more than ever he could kill Django. Don't worry, Usopp's big speech is coming up, Zoro grinned as Usopp blushed at the words. Speech, Brook repeated in surprise, and he had his answer at once when Usopp in the memory screamed out desperately for the kids to listen to him. At first, they refused to listen to anything he had to say until he gave them one order: protect Kaya. He ordered them. The Straw Hats all watched, some of them in awe as Usopp went on, do as I say. Don't argue with me, I'm giving you the most important task there is right now. It's absolutely critical you succeed. Robin nodded. Yes, keeping Kaya safe was the most important thing right now. So long as she was alive, then Kuro could never win. Take Kaya and get away from here, Usopp said loudly, leaving no room to argue. You must keep her safe. This is the reason we wanted to become pirates. To protect what's dear to us. Now do as I say and run. Gasping for breath, the three more sensitive members had in tears at the convincing in his voice. The Usopp pirates were all nodding in understanding. Now go, Usopp finally yelled. That's a direct order. Tears in their eyes they cried out, yes captain. And taking Kaya, they led her away into the forest. That was something else, Brooke said softly as Chopper and Frankie cried at that. You certainly have a gift with words when it comes to defending your friends, Usopp-san. Not anyone could make running away sound brave. I had to say something to get them to go, Usopp said, tears in his own eyes, feeling pride at his decision back then. He rarely felt it, but it was this moment that he was proud to have been weak Usopp. Even if he was just a kid who was playing pirate, he didn't regret anything he did here. As Django tried to go after them, his past self hit him in the back with a ball of lead. Even with Django looking ready to kill, Kuro yelled at him to continue chasing after Kaya before he said to Usopp that escape was useless, since he knew that Kaya was so weak. He then ordered Butchie to finish Zoro off, but after finally pushing him off him, Zoro had finished him in one slash. While the whole time, Luffy had slowly been walking up the hill, towards Kuro, as Usopp tried to get back up to go after Django. He managed to get up a little before they all heard a noise coming from the forest. In rage, Usopp demanded to know if Kuro had any pity at all for Kaya, but what the butler said next got them all steamed. Kuro came right out and admitted to him that he had none, saying that Kaya had never been anything more than a pawn to his plan and he'll express gratitude once she's dead. What a heartless monster, Brook growled, his teeth grinding so hard together that it sounding like they were cracking. This guy's hopelessly evil, past Zoro muttered, and no one, not even Sanji, could disagree with him on that one. We should put him out of his misery, Luffy agreed before he yelled to Usopp to go to Kaya and the Usopp pirates and that he would take care of Kuro. At his words, Usopp had managed to push himself back to his feet, despite his wounds. Kuro was slightly impressed that he could still move but continued to mock him. Oh, there are just so many people here I'd love to punch. Frankie growled. I say that we all go back to the East Blue and teach these pirates a lesson. I have no complaints there, Sanji agreed, wanting nothing more than to beat this guy's brains in. Usopp glared back at him before yelling out, shut up. You won't get away with this. I won't let you. You betrayed the villagers' trust. Not to mention you planned to take the life of a sweet, young girl. This is the last time you ever get your way. Usopp. Luffy cried in worry as the sniper tried to walk, but his strength gave out so that he fell back to the ground. Kuro laughed at Usopp's effort and taunted him by saying that even if he did manage to get to Django, he'll end up dead and that he should be safest where he stayed there. But Usopp wouldn't listen. I don't care, he croaked out from where he lay, I don't care if I'm weak. I'll protect them. Everyone stared at him as the tears suddenly came back to his eyes, tears that he wasn't ashamed of hiding here. I'm captain of the Usopp pirates, he declared, a brave warrior of the sea who fights for what he holds dear. I will protect everyone in the village even if it kills me. His voice got stronger and he screamed out with as much strength he could muster, on my word. You will never set foot in this village. Frankie broke down completely at that, hugging Usopp again. Man, that's so touching. I don't believe what I'm hearing. You're a real man, you were hurt so bad but you kept on fighting. I think I feel a song coming up. You were great, Usopp, Chopper cried out loudly. Could you all give it a rest? Nami yelled at them in annoyance, but she couldn't hide the proud smile on her lips. She was only sorry she missed that speech the first time. Present-day Usopp was crying as well. After landing on the Boeing archipelago and training with Master Heracles, he swore to become stronger. This way that he wouldn't have to rely on Luffy for everything and that he could support his captain for once. He always wished that he could become stronger, and he had, but he hoped that he would never have to let go of this part of himself. The Black Cat pirates were all laughing at Usopp's vow, but that ticked Luffy off. Grabbing a boulder he threw it at them. What's so funny? He demanded, standing on top of it and glaring down at them all with a wild look in his eyes that made them all shut up at once. Thanks Luffy, Usopp sniffled a little. Luffy. Zoro called to him, having picked Usopp up and was carrying him on his shoulder. Me and Usopp are gonna chase down that hypno freak. Is that a problem? No, Luffy called, his back to them, hurry. As the two of them went up the hill, Kuro hissed as they passed, demanding to know who gave them permission to go anywhere. Since when do they need anyone's permission to do anything? Nami smiled, knowing that they were going to do whatever they wanted anyway. I did, Luffy called, launching an attack to make Kuro dodge it as he ordered Zoro and Usopp to get going. Kuro tried to slash him, but Luffy managed to evade it and even counter it with a gum-gum spear, but Kuro disappeared using his pussyfoot technique. By the time that Luffy was standing upright again, the two had already taken off. Kuro reappeared and suddenly demanded, before I kill you, I feel compelled to ask, what is an outsider like you butting into this village's business for? Luffy smirked, because there's a man in this village I don't want to let die. Usopp blinked at that. Does he mean me? Who else would he mean? Zoro asked him with a teasing smile. He was fighting to help you that whole time, idiot. Usopp's lip quivered at the thought as Kuro laughed, asking if Luffy was alright with that for being the reason he died. Sure Luffy answered confidently, but I'm not gonna die. This I've been looking forward to seeing, Sanji said at once, glad to see that someone will finally be putting Kuro in his place. The battle continued. Luffy stretched his arms to hold Kuro and then tried to give him a foot kick. Kuro dodged it by sending him crashing into the ground. Luffy then tried to use a combination of Gum-Gum Whip and Gum-Gum Pistol at him, but Kuro dodged both moves, resulting in actually standing on Luffy's outstretched arm and proclaiming that the fight was boring him. Come on Captain, Chopper cried out as Kuro ran up the arm and kicked Luffy to the ground again. Yeah, you don't want to lose to a loser like him, do you? Sanji added as the Black Cat pirates tried to cheer their own captain on, but Kuro angrily shouted at them to never call him by that name again and that he had planned on killing off Captain Kuro from the start. What's he talking about? Brook asked bewildered. But Kuro was more than happy to explain how tired he was of devising plans for a band of men who cared only about mayhem and how sick he was to be relentlessly pursued by bounty hunters and government dogs. How he was sick and tired of that life. But that's what a pirate's life is all about, Nami sighed. He didn't honestly think that it was going to be easy when he became one, did he? I think that he just didn't know what he signed up for, Robin answered. Kuro finished by telling Luffy when his plan succeeds today, his goal will be fully achieved and that money and peace of mind will be his. Do you understand now, boy? He demanded. I will not allow this perfect plan, years in the making, to fail. He held his claws out and runs forward to attack. My plan will not be disrupted by an urchin like you. Who's he calling urchin? Usopp asked hotly. Luffy. Chopper cried out anxiously, but Luffy had already stretched his arms behind him and grabbed the boulder that he used to threaten the black cats with and blocked one of Kuro's cat claws. It would seem that you can do a lot more than stretch, he said, his face twisted in surprise and annoyance. That's right, Luffy said, I've been toughing myself up to be a pirate. And by hugging the rock he was able to get a good hold of it, smashing it and breaking off the 5 cat claws at once. He broke them. Chopper screamed out. 5 down and 5 to go. Frankie cheered as Robin giggled. Holding the rock up, Luffy asked, you know what? If you don't want a reputation. And with all the strength he had, he slammed the boulder right into Kuro's face as he screamed, then don't be a pirate. Well said, Zoro said approvingly. The Black Cat pirates start cheering their captain on. But when he got up, blood dripping down the side of his face, and dropped the biggest bombshell on them all. He explained that he planned on killing the Black Cat pirates as well as Django later. He explained that he was planning to kill the Black Cats anyway to prove his innocence and not to make the world notice that he was still alive, which greatly shocked everyone. What a bastard, Sanji growled, sick of feeling angry. Damn it, why doesn't Luffy hurry and beat this guy already? I never intended to let any of you mongrels leave this village alive, Kuro said to them all. No one who knows my true identity can be allowed to live to tell about it. That's sick, Zoro said softly. How could he treat his own friends like that? Chopper whispered horrified. Because he doesn't see them as friends, Robin answered, not every crew is like ours. Kuro sees his crewmates as tools, nothing more than that. You had already planned to kill every last one of us from the very beginning. One of the Black Cats cried out. He chuckled darkly. That's right, he confessed, sounding more insane with every word. 3 years ago, I planned to erase Captain Kuro, and every last person who ever knew him. It's all part of my plan. You guys are dumb, Luffy said, looking at the pirates with disappointment, like how he got a birthday present that he didn't want. The most uncool pirates I know. He added, looking back to Kuro. We're uncool, huh? Kuro asked, aggravated. Pirates are nothing more than savages, incapable of rising above their animal nature. Without my plans, what could they possibly accomplish? A crew is nothing to me. They are simply a means to an end. Crew members are just pawns in the captain's game. That's not true, is it? Chopper asked fearfully. Of course not, Nami said at once. Kuro's only using that as an excuse to do whatever he wanted, Sanji said. While it is a crew's duty to obey their captain, it's also the captain's duty to be the leader and to take care of the crew as well. Whether my men live or die is up to me and me alone, Kuro continued. If I tell them to fight, they will fight. And if I order them to die, they had better do it. They know the punishment for disobedience. He grinned at Luffy, who continued to give him that empty look. Zoro looked over at his captain's eyes as well and could see it. He was looking at Kuro like how Ace looked at the nobles in Goa. Disgust, anger, and pity, but also without a trace of clemency. Even if Kuro begged for forgiveness, Luffy would never forget this. Kuro must have sensed this as well, because his face suddenly turned into fury and outraged as he bellowed out, "This is how pirates are. Don't you dare talk down to me, boy." But Luffy didn't even say a word, Usopp said. He didn't need to, Robin answered, recognizing that look as well. Just looking at him like a lowlife was enough to get the message across, Sanji agreed. But suddenly Luffy smiled. You know, no matter how many hundreds or thousands of men follow you as their captain, he said, still with that same smile, you will never be as good as Usopp. Usopp stared at him as the Black Cats became lost to what he meant. You fool, Kuro snarled, sounding more like a wild animal with every second. Are you saying that I'm inferior to a kid pretending to be a pirate? That's right, Luffy agreed without a shred of doubt in his voice. Thanks, Captain, Usopp whispered again. Those words meant more to him than anything. Kuro threw his head back and laughed. Well, aren't you funny? He demanded. Don't get cocky just because you snapped off one of my cat claws. How exactly is he better than me? He demanded as he stepped into his pussyfoot maneuver. Let's hear it. Still smiling, Luffy confessed, "'Cause he's got heart. A guy like you," he said, stretching his arm out, "doesn't know what a true pirate is." And like a whip, he swung around and found Kuro, smashing him into the side of the cliff. The Black Cats were amazed that he could keep up with that technique as Usopp fell to his knees. Even before he joined, Luffy was fighting for his honor. You deserve it, you know, Nami told him kindly, because it's true. I appreciate it, Usopp said in a choked-up voice. How insulting, Kuro's voice said as the smoke cleared. It would appear that you need a lesson in what true pirates are like. Slicking his messed up hair back, he calmed that the first lesson he would teach Luffy about pirates would be about terror. That was when he did something strange. He began to slouch back and forth and back and forth. "What's he doing?" Chopper asked. But the black cats were terrified, begging Kuro not to use that technique. The out-of-the-bag attack. "What's that?" Usopp asked in confusion as Nami gasped. "I remember that," she whispered, sweat pouring down her face. "What's the big deal?" Luffy asked them in confusion, not getting why they would be freaking out. He's just wobbling back and forth. But they continued to scream and beg for him to spare them. Luffy didn't move until a slight wind blew his bangs and he blinked in surprise. That was when Kuro disappeared, leaving nothing but dark purple whips of smoke, drifting across the land forebodingly. "Where is he?" Brook cried, staring around him. "I can barely keep up with him," Zoro said, using haki. Like before he couldn't really use it like he could with a real person, but here he could at least get an idea to what was happening. "Strange, his moments are so random," Sanji agreed before he began drooling over the sight of seeing Nami coming out of the ship with a small bag of treasure. Not that that lasted long, for suddenly, one of the pirates was slashed to pieces. Luffy gasped. "What's he doing over there?" "You mean Kuro did that?" Brook gasped, "But I didn't even see anything. He was just slashed." Chopper gasped, running over to get a look at the man. "This is bad." He gasped, "He's really trying to kill them." But suddenly more men fell, blood was splattered everywhere, Kuro's claw marks slashing everything, killing everywhere. One of the men begged him to stop but another one yelled, that he couldn't be reasoned with, that this maneuver was so fast that not even he knew what he was attacking. "I get it," Robin called out, "while he uses superhuman speed, he can't tell what he's really hitting. Though the fact he can move so fast at his level it is still impressive, as well as the fact that he does not really care about anyone around him and feels no remorse for killing his crewmates, counteracting this weakness. In other words, he doesn't care who he's attacking, they're all the same to him," Nami summed up. "This heartless bastard doesn't deserve to live," Frankie declared as the black cats were all screaming in pain and terror, trying to run only to be killed. "I just didn't understand what was going on," Nami whispered as she looked to see the horror-struck expression on her past self's face. "How could any captain do this?" Chopper croaked out, feeling cold as he watched the men all be slaughtered before his eyes and be unable to do anything about it. "Because he's not a real captain," Usopp said, shaking from head to foot. "No real captain would do something like this." As if to prove his point, he turned back to Luffy. Luffy didn't move the whole time as he watched. He was also being slashed at, cuts appearing all over his body, but he didn't seem to notice it. His eyes were shadowed and he was shaking in rage. Even with his own blood dripping down, he just stood there before he finally screamed out so loudly that the words echoed in their heads, "Don't you have any honor? Those men are your friends." "Oh, he's gonna get it now," Frankie grinned, glad that this was almost over now. At that moment, Kuro cut Luffy across his chest, but he stood his ground and somehow he was able to stretch out at one direction and grabbed hold of Kuro's jacket before he threw him to the ground. "I found you," Luffy grunted in satisfaction. "He found him," Usopp yelled proudly. "He may not be able to use observation haki yet, but his senses are top-notch," Sanji grinned out. Kuro quickly got back up, looking more than a little angry at being caught. "You bastard," he hissed, "you should have accepted your fate like a good boy. Now look at what you've done. Thanks to you, my little pawns are still alive, and in misery." All around the shore, Kuro's men laid on the ground, covered in their own blood and crying in pain. "Even now he feels nothing for them," Brook said softly. "He wouldn't follow this man for any amount of money out there. Kuro was just plain evil. It would have been better to just let them die in the attack," Kuro sneered at them all. Luffy didn't say a word as he glared at him, but there was now a deep anger burning there. "So now what?" Kuro mocked as he got up. "You have something to say?" "Yeah," Luffy said as he glanced at his hat on the ground a few yards away. "No matter what happens to me, I will never be like you." Brook nodded firmly. "Not will," Kuro sneered, pointing his claws at Luffy's face, "someone like you can't be like me. And I take great pride in that." Usopp called. Luffy's personality was always like a little kid, in the sense that he tends to go to the extremes. He can either be extremely greedy, especially in cases of food, who his crew is, and adventure, or extraordinarily selfless, going so far as to virtually sacrifice himself to avenge or protect his friends, crew, and family. That was the side of Luffy that he admired more. Kuro glared at Luffy when he realized that he was giving him that exact same look that angered him so deeply. With threats on him cutting Luffy up, Kuro moved back so that he was standing back up on the top of the hill again before he went to do his move again. This time Luffy ran forward, however he was too late, Kuro disappeared. Luffy stood there, trying to sense him, and when he slashed again, Luffy moved back so that he just barely missing him. "Go Luffy go!" Usopp and Chopper both cheered on as Kuro disappeared again and reappeared behind Luffy, ready to strike again. "Aren't you tired? Bet you are after all the dancing around you've been doing," Luffy taunted him, grinning. "You tell him," Sanji grinned evilly. Don't get cocky, Kuro sneered, using both palms to move his glasses up. That was simply a warm-up. The real fight begins now. Soon I'll be feasting on your fear, complemented by the sweet wine of your agony. Clever, Frankie muttered with sarcasm. Just where do guys get lines like this? He used another out-of-the-bag attack, but Luffy had grabbed him and held him tight so that the butler couldn't get away. Before Kuro could move, Luffy wrapped his limbs around Kuro's body, stopping him dead in his tracks. Nice try, you jerk, Luffy grinned, getting right up in his face. Oh, right, Frankie cheered. He got him. Try to get away from that jerk. Nami cheered, knowing that this was finally it. Damn you, get away from me. Kuro yelled as he attempted to break himself free. Luffy, however, was far stronger than he was and didn't let go. Wow, butler man, your life really sucks now, doesn't it? Luffy asked conversationally, as if asking him what his favorite color was. Your plan of 3 years is a complete and total failure. Couldn't have said it better myself. Usopp said, grinning from ear to ear. Now beat him for Kaya, Luffy. Let go. Kuro screamed out as the Black Cat pirates started cheering Luffy on. Wow, they sure changed their tunes quick, didn't they? Brook said as if being insulted. Well, Kuro was planning on killing them all, Robin reminded him. Just shut up, Luffy yelled, looking annoyed as he head-butted Kuro and then threw his head back so that it stretched far enough for him to yell right up in their faces, you have no right to cheer me on. Yeah, it's their fault they're there in the first place, Zoro agreed. They all felt the excitement rise as they saw the look in Luffy's eyes. It was the same one that he wore just before he sent Buggy flying. Stretching his head back, gum gum. He screamed, you insect, my plan will absolutely not be disrupted. Kuro shouted just before Luffy head-butted him, finishing the attack, bell. Shattering the remains of Kuro's glasses, the bonk truly did sound like a deep bell ringing before Luffy let go and gracefully landed on the ground just as the butler did. He was out cold before his shattered glasses hit the ground. Kuro laid there, bleeding from the head, his eyes rolled all the way back so they could only see white. He's gonna have one nasty headache when he wakes up, Sanji smirked. Got him. That crazy rubber guy beat Captain Kuro. One of the pirates exclaimed in hushed amazement. Even the Marines were a match for Kuro, man of 1,000 plans. Another pirate yelled in disbelief. And this guy still beat him. Which isn't saying much, Robin said as the pirates wanted to know who he was. Luffy calmly turned around to address them. I'm Monkey D. Luffy. The only time a pirate should abandon his name is when he dies. True, Brook nodded firmly. Luffy said it best, if you don't want a reputation, then don't be a pirate. I would never lose to a coward who ditches his name, betrays his crew, and runs from his life on the sea, Luffy said firmly. You tell him, Chopper said proudly. The Black Cat pirates looked at one another. Luffy, never heard that name before. But you will soon enough, Usopp said firmly. You should remember my name for the rest of your lives, Luffy said before he grinned. 'Cause one of these days, I'm gonna be king of the pirates. The pirates stared at him just as Luffy picked Kuro up by his collar and threw him down to them all. Now get out of here. He roared as Kuro landed at their feet. And never ever come back. Or else you'll have hell to pay, Usopp shouted with him, almost believing that they could hear him too. The pirates didn't have to be told twice as they ran back to their ship in a mad panic, dragging Kuro with them. Wait, why'd they take him? Chopper asked in confusion, after he was trying to kill them a minute ago. Well, Luffy was going to make sure that he left with them one way or another, Nami pointed out. Besides, a crew needs a captain, Zoro added, without one, they're completely lost. Even if their Kuro wasn't a real captain, they wouldn't have lasted long otherwise. But what about that Django fellow? Brook asked. Looks like he got left behind, Sanji said, and he quickly recalled their experience leaving Alabasta as past Nami jumped from the ship before the Black Cats. She was lugging a bag of treasure with her as she ran up to Luffy. Before she could say anything to him, Luffy almost ended up collapsing in exhaustion, but Nami was able to help support him and keep him standing. You did good, Luffy, she said softly as they watched the pirates climb on board and leave, hopefully never to return. I expect even you to collapse after what you just went through. Luffy didn't say a word as he laid back on the ground, staring up at the sky with a dark look in his eyes, as if trying to figure out a difficult question. Nami gently sat next to him. Say, tell me, why were you so made earlier? Luffy's eyes looked at her as he said, almost angrily, 'cause I truly hate people like them. They're so wrong. He fell silent for a moment before he added, crewmates aren't meant to be treated that way. He's right, Chopper said firmly. That's what happens when you choose such garbage to follow, Sanji told him. Memory Nami carefully picked up Luffy's hat. What are you talking about? Of course it isn't. Most pirates aren't the brave, honorable people you make them out to be. I'd say that Captain Kuro is pretty standard. Sad as it is to say, that is true, Robin answered, especially outside the Grand Line. Why is that? Usopp asked. In the Grand Line, in order to survive, you have to be able to trust your crew completely, she answered with a smile, but out here, the weather is normal and easy to predict. You can replace your crew at pretty much any port. Luffy glanced at Nami before he looked at the sky again, and then he completely ruined the moment by said, I want some meat. Nami slammed Luffy's hat into his face, you unbelievable. After all that, all he could think about was feeding his gut. Nami sighed. I just didn't know what I was going to do with him. I didn't know that he was going to kill his own men while he was at it, but I can't say that I'm surprised, Usopp said softly. It was a relief to see that Zoro and Usopp both come back, with Usopp walking again but limping heavily, letting them know that Kaya and the boys were okay. Thank goodness, Chopper sighed in relief. Thanks guys, past Usopp told them all, I wouldn't have been able to protect the village without you. I think that's the first time I've heard such humility in you, Usopp-san, Brook said softly. Past Zoro looked up, give credit where credit is due. If you had just stood back and done nothing, I wouldn't have done anything either. Yeah, same here, Luffy chirped up. Who cares about any of that? Memory, Nami asked happily, hugging the bag of loot to her, I've got my hands on this sweet, sweet treasure now and I couldn't be happier. And that is all that matters to me, Nami swan, Sanji swooned to her loudly. Usopp laughed before he looked to the sea with a serious expression on his face, everything that happened here today helped me. I've just come to a very difficult decision. And like that, the darkness returned and they were back in the forest. So what happened? Robin asked in mild surprise. Yeah, what did you decide to do? Chopper asked curiously as Usopp folded his arms. For a long time I wondered whether or not I should go out to sea and be a pirate or stay in the village, Usopp confessed. I love the village and everyone in it and it wasn't easy to leave. But I still wanted to go out to sea. It wasn't until I met you three did I really becoming inspired to set out on my own. Well, not completely on your own, Nami smirked. We all rested in the village for a couple more days before we were ready to leave. And we were going to after we got one last meal at the restaurant. Usopp smiled as he thought about the Usopp pirates and wondered how close they were getting to their dreams. When the new memory appeared, the Straw Hats were standing in the restaurant that Usopp had taken them to earlier. Luffy, Zoro, and Nami were sitting peacefully at the table, just finishing their meal. Now that we've eaten, Zoro said comfortably. We should probably get going. Yeah, you're right, Luffy said as he chewed on a fish bone. Again, he has no manners, Sanji sighed despairingly. At that moment, Kaya came walking into the restaurant. Wow, she looks much better. Brook said happily. Yeah, by the time we left, she was already up and healthier, Usopp said smiling. Here you are, Kaya said in a sweet voice. Hello there, miss, Luffy greeted as Nami asked if it was all right for her to be up and out of bed already. Yes, Kaya answered as she approached the table. I think now I can truly start recovering. You see, my sickness this last year was caused to the mental shock of losing both of my parents. And Usopp's friendship helped me start getting better. I can't stay in bed forever, you know. Usopp grinned wider, glad to hear that. She paused for a moment. You've all done so much for me and I can't thank you enough. She beamed at them and said, I have prepared a present for you from the bottom of my heart to show how grateful I am for everything you've done here. I'd be honored if you accept it. This is it, Nami said happily, knowing that they couldn't have asked for a better present. What was it? Frankie asked interested, but instead of answering, they followed Kaya out the door and down the road to the same place where they fought the Black Cat pirates. Greeting them was a tall, formally dressed butler who looked a bit like a lamb. His hair was curly like a lamb's fleece and even two lamb horns sticking out of it. Who's that? Robin asked. That's another butler named Mary, Usopp said as they led them to the coast to where their present was waiting. Mary, Chopper repeated in amazement before his eyes widened. Did this mean? But he got his answer as soon as he realized what Kaya's present was. A small caravel was sitting there waiting for them, about half the size of the Sunny and carried a sheet figurehead. Brook couldn't understand why some members of the crew were crying at the sight of it. What is it? He asked confused. It's, Usopp croaked out, tears falling down his face, it's Mary. I thought that man's name was Mary. He asked in confusion. The ship, Nami answered, wiping away a stray tear, the Going Mary. It was our first ship and it carried us all the way from here to Water 7. After we got there, Mary couldn't sail anymore so we got the Sunny. Brook stared at the ship, this was the first time that he had seen it, but there was something strange about it, like it was home. The three memory selves gasped happily. A real caravel. Past Nami gasped. Are you actually giving this to us? Luffy cried out to them. As a token of my appreciation, Kaya answered happily. Now that's how you thank someone, Sanji said beaming, buy them a ship. Well, we needed her all right, Nami smiled staring happily at the boat. It's a slightly older model but I personally designed it and she sails like a dream, Mary explained with a hint of pride in his tone. Really? Frankie asked with a laugh. Not bad, he might have made a good shipwright if he didn't become a butler. Mary talked about some of her features and told them her name, she's a fine ship and her name is the Going Mary. As they talked the whole crew happily thought of their own memories of the Mary. Brook was feeling almost jealous that he never had a chance to meet such a ship. At that moment, screams could be heard coming down one of the hills. The Straw Hats looked to see Usopp rolling down the hill with a backpack the size of a large boulder strapped to his back. "What happened to you?" Robin asked, interested. "I finished packing, but had trouble stopping," Usopp confessed in embarrassment. "What made you think you could drag that heavy thing?" Sanji asked to himself. "Oh no, it's Usopp." Kaya cried in worry when she saw him rolling towards them. "Hey, what's he doing?" Luffy asked in confusion. "Looks fun." "He would," Usopp sighed, "but believe me, it was anything but fun." "Well, we better stop him," Past Zoro said in a bored tone. "That weirdo is on a collision course with our boat." "Who you calling weirdo?" Usopp demanded. "Who do you think?" he asked back. Both Luffy and Zoro stuck their feet out and stopped Usopp by when Usopp went slamming into them. "Ow, hey thanks guys," Usopp muttered sarcastically. "With friends like that, who needs enemies?" "Anytime," Luffy said. "I should kill you both for that," Usopp said bitterly. But once free of his overlarge backpack, Luffy and others boarded the Going Merry while Usopp said his goodbyes to Kaya. How he promised that he would come back someday and tell her stories about his adventures at sea, and she said she looked forward to it. When he was done, he turned towards Going Merry. "You guys, take care," he yelled. "I hope we meet again sometime." "How could you think otherwise?" Nami asked him, smiling, nudging him in the shoulder. "After everything we went through." Usopp laughed a little. "I didn't think that you guys needed a guy like me. I never thought that you'd want me to join." "How come?" Luffy asked in confusion. "Huh?" Past Usopp asked in disbelief. "Well, because, are you antisocial or something? I'm taking off for live on the high seas and I hope we'll eventually meet again, that's all." "What are you talking about? Get on already," Past Zoro said in annoyance as he pointed down at the ship. Usopp blinked in confusion until Luffy explained. "We're friends, right?" Luffy said, almost uninterested. "So get on." Usopp stood there, unable to believe his eyes as he stared, and then he jumped up, punching the air and cried out, "I'm really a pirate captain now." "Don't be stupid, Usopp, I'm the captain." Luffy yelled angrily, but everyone was laughing as Usopp jumped on board with them all and heaving all his stuff up with him. "If they invited you, what made you think that you were captain?" Sanji asked him curiously. "What, I can hope, can't I?" Usopp asked, "Though thinking about it now, I see that I don't think I'm cut out to be a captain." "You have a lot of qualities that a good captain needs though, Usopp-san," Brook told him. "Yeah, well it's easy just being a crew member," Usopp said as he watched Luffy. But he learned the hard way that being captain isn't nearly as easy he once thought it was. Being the leader of a bunch of kids was one thing, a pirate captain fighting to get to the top was another. The Straw Hats all jumped on board with the other 4 crew members and watched as Kaya and Mary waved them off, even glancing up to see the 3 boys were up on the cliff and watching them all set out. But Usopp was tearing up as he looked up at the mast of their beloved ship. He couldn't believe that they were able to ride Mary again after all this time. He gazed back at the shore. His life as a pirate may not have started off like he planned, but in the end, his one lie did become the truth. Pirates did come to shore, and he set out with friends out to sea. After getting some drinks from below, they were all toasting up on deck. "Cheers to a new ship and a new crewmate," Luffy declared, and they toasted, all of them laughing and enjoying themselves. Usopp smiled wider. Fighting the Black Cat pirates had been worth it to end up here. After all, they had been fighting to live, not to die.